listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is October 28th, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing on this fine Monday morning?
Oh, Spencer, good morning to you. Yes, here we are for another early Monday morning record, trying to get my brain booted up for the week. So I'm doing good. My only regret is that there's really just been nothing going on around World of Warcraft this week. So I don't know what we're going to fill the show with, but we'll figure something out. We've been doing this a long time.
I think there is tons to wake your brain up because we had a lot going on this past week, not only in what we did in the game, but also just controversy around the game and how people want to make money about the game and all sorts of craziness that happened with the game. And so let's address some of that up front, I guess, because I think that makes sense. There was a Brutosaur mount that came out this past week. It cost $90 as real money, or 1.6 million gold, depending on which way you did it, because you can, and I did explain this on Twitter to some people, you can take gold and purchase tokens. And when you purchase tokens in game, they can either be exchanged for 30 days of game time or for $15 of BattleNet balance. And you can then use those 4 tokens to buy, well, it'd be 6 tokens to buy a Brutosaur mount, if that's something you wanted to do, which a lot of people did. And you know how I know a lot of people did? Because token prices soared because of supply and demand.
That token bubble, it crested, and that was it practically doubled. I think
more than doubled
on US servers, in that first day.
In some, I don't know if it was EU region, but in one of the regions it went up above 400,000 gold per token. I know in EU and whatnot, in US, I saw it go up to 360 in that kind of range, which was kind of crazy. So for those who were wanting to spend a little bit of money to buy some gold off of the tokens, they could choose to do so and got, quite the earnings. But for those who are trying to go the other way, it became increasingly more expensive. Still, though, even at 300k, cheaper than buying the original Brutosaur mount at 5 million gold. And especially cheaper now than buying it at 10 million, which is what people have been doing off of the black market auction house. So yes, that was a thing that happened this past week. And regardless of how everyone's different opinions are about a subscription-based game and store mounts and how this works, I will state that my standing on it is that this is a bargain for those who wanted to invest in doing it, particularly if you use gold to doing it. If you'd been saving up gold to buy yourself a black market auction house Brutosaur mount, this thing was like discount, super sale, get it off the back of the truck as it's arriving kind of mount. So it certainly was great for folks who did that. Even at the 300k per token, it still would have been a massive bargain. So I think the utility of it, with it having both an auction house and a mailbox on it, it is super useful and is something that I think a lot of people will take advantage of. I have certainly enjoyed my Brutosaur mount that I bought back in BFA for the last 5 years, and it has been wonderful, and I've used it constantly, and I do not begrudge the fact that Blizzard put this one up for 1.6 mil or whatever it was, any way you want to look at it, $90. I think that more people having these things is just great for folks who want to actually dive in and take advantage of the joys that I've experienced for the last 5 years. So more power to them when it comes to those who chose to buy it. If you are someone who is you stand against the Brutosaur, you are no longer wanting to help out with folks who you don't want to spend the money, you don't think that they should be charging the money, etc., then I also understand your opinion of, hey, things inside video games have become increasingly more expensive, and I think buying pixels for money is something that is a very hot topic at the moment. I personally speak out regularly about how expensive Hearthstone and Diablo 4 and Overwatch skins are for things. I will say that this does bring a utility, which is certainly something that none of those do, which I definitely appreciate in a big way. But and also the standard from the previous Brutosaur helps with the $90 price tag, I think, of it being 5 million gold back in the day. But I feel you on video games are getting more expensive. I will say that the prices have not gone up in a long time, and when they're supplementing their income by doing things like this, it can feel very greedy. But I think we're overall in an okay place I think, at the Brutosaur at the end of the week. I don't think people are still outraged. I think it was just that 2-day
No,
period.
I didn't see that much. Honestly, most of the people that I came across personally were like excited about it or just kind of marveling at the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I spent the equivalent of about 500 USD on my Brutosaur
Yep.
back in 2020.
Yep.
I mean, 5 million gold. And now, yeah, it's like you said, black market auction house that goes for gold cap every time. If you can catch one, it's 10 million gold, which is like $1,000 USD.
Yep.
I mean, the mount is cool. It looks cool. I like the dark portal kind of motif on the back of it and stuff. And yeah, having the mailbox is a nice bonus. I didn't buy it. I'm not really planning to, but we'll see. I do think they couldn't bring this in cheap, right? They couldn't do a $25 mount on this because there's so many of us who spend so much gold on it that it would be kind of a slap in the face. I mean, granted, I have made all of the gold I spent back on my Brutosaur from using the Brutosaur regularly, right? Like just having an on-demand auction house and just post stuff whenever you want to. You use the auction house a lot more because you can check it whenever you pick anything up. You can go, do I auction this or not? So I made all my gold back in a couple years total, and now I got an extra couple million on top of that. And I'm not some gold maker or whatever. I just play the game, and if I feel like I can auction something for some coin, I do it.
Yeah.
So like this mount will make you gold. It sounds maybe weird on its face, but it's true. Like you make gold off of this, and gold does have a cash value. So on that level, I mean, I think they could have gone more expensive with it. I'm not mad as a BFA Brutosaur owner, but like if they made it $20 or $25, whatever the regular mount store mount comes in at, I'd be kind of pissed because I feel like that really deprecates my investment in the original Brutosaur, which already has been deprecated because they started putting auction houses in the new cities with Dragonflight, right? There's an auction house in Veldraken. There's one in Dornegal, which really does reduce the value of my Brutosaur to begin with. So, if they made it too cash cheap, I'd be a little bit mad. But I mean, I think it's a cool looking mount. I think it's great for people who want that mobile auction house functionality, but like that kind of gold is just well beyond their reach forever, right? Like it's actually... It makes more sense for them to spend 90 USD on the thing than to attempt to farm millions of gold to buy a mount. So I don't know. And there is some etiquette. Like if you have a Bruto, like if you're AFK in a city, man, you got to get on your Bruto or whatever. So let people use the auction house. So new Bruto owners, keep that in mind. Do your part. Yeah, I think like I kind of expected a bigger like disaster in terms of PR than what ended up really happening. Like there's always kind of that knee jerk, like, ooh, new shop mount, cash grab, whatever. I saw many more people just excited to get one and were like, whatever, like here's my credit card, like take the money because I want the thing and I'm going to use it. And I understand the intrinsic value of being able to make gold off of it. So like, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely give and take there. But the good thing is if you hate this mount and you're like, screw them, I can't believe they do this. We subscribe to this game. This is way too expensive. Don't buy it. And every time you see a Brutosaur, or the store Brutosaur walking around somewhere, just keep in mind that like that's one of the reasons why your sub price has been relatively stable. Right?
Yep, it is.
If they can make money off of stuff like that from the whales, and you don't want to give them any money for that, that's absolutely you're the customer. It's up to you. But like, man, when the amount of these things that you saw on Thursday in Dornegal, it was like you could just take a screenshot.
It was weird to be like, there's
$3,000. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, I mean, they're obviously selling these. The price tag is not a hurdle for enough players for it to be like a thing that they're not obviously making money off of. So, I mean, whatever, whether you like it or not, I mean, that's up to you. That's your own personal preference, and you're entitled to whatever you want to do with how you play the game. Blizzard making more money off of the game probably delivers you a better experience in a lot of ways, right? Like it gives them more resources to develop stuff for you to play, and it keeps your prices down on the stuff that you need to play the game, probably, at least in terms of the sub and all that. Like I think sub prices definitely would have gone up over the years if they hadn't added the cash shop back when.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It was a thing that was like super hot Thursday, and then I mean, a lot of the people in my circles are adults. I don't want to say middle-aged, but you know,
We all
whatever.
hope they live longer than that.
Yeah, we're like older people, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm in my early 40s, you know, so most of the people that are kind of in my circles are around that age, maybe a little older, maybe a little younger. I could see maybe I don't know. I don't know. What
Everyone's
I'm saying
financial
is like,
situation is different.
yeah, the people I play with are like they're like stable, chill, mild mannered people, and nobody was like, I can't believe they're doing this, right? So I don't know. That's just my experience. Again, I mean, I understand there are a couple sides to this, but I think it's cool. I kind of want one just for the aesthetic because it's cool looking and the mailbox functionality is great, but I don't know. I don't know if I can really justify it. I don't need the core functionality of the auction house. I have a mailbox toy. There's mailboxes all over the place, so I don't know. I'm probably in a spot where I can live without it, really.
Yeah, you absolutely can. As can anyone else. As you said, they've been adding auction houses to all the major cities. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're really like this is pure convenience as far as saving time goes. So yeah, I think that's that there's no like pay to win aspect of this, which I think is something that I saw floating around a little bit, where it's like, no, this is paying for like minor convenience is what this is. So
Right.
factor that
Yeah,
into the
it's like
conversation.
minor convenience, but I think the biggest thing is that it like alters your behavior because once you have an auction house that you can just pop up anywhere you want, you start using the auction house a lot more, right?
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't
true
use the
too.
auction house that
Yeah.
much before I had one, so you know, there is so much utility with this mount that you don't really think about. So like to me, it is a bargain at what they price it. Like you said, it's equivalent to like 1.6 million gold. That's
Yeah.
80% off. So yeah, I don't know, whatever. Don't buy one if you don't want it, but it's not going to ruin the scope of World of Warcraft or anything. It's just a
Yeah.
mount.
No. All right. So out of that controversy and potentially into another one that was got spicy this past week, because I wanted to chat about here on top of the show. There's been a lot of talk about this patch and what happened with this patch and what's going on with this patch and what it sounds like happened from based off of reading a lot of the blog stuff and what's been going on was that some of the changes that had been hot fixed in since the launch of the expansion did not make it into the .5 patch that came out this current week. So there was a lot of changes that came in with the .5 patch, which brought in its own level of bugs, but then there was also some changes that they've been hot fixing over the past couple of weeks that they then didn't get in with the .5 patch. It's like we got an older version of the game while getting a bunch of new stuff. And that just like borked a lot of things, which created 4 days of rough gameplay for a lot of players, and in some cases very broken gameplay for some players. Rogues, for example. Yes, rogues were doing 2 to 3 times as much damage as they should be, which created another issue. And this is the issue I want to highlight, because out of the whole thing, for me playing with Mythic rating and doing Mythic Plus and all that sort of stuff, this was like I barely noticed what was going on with this. For me, because I don't compete inside of the Mythic Plus realm. I don't compete heavily and hardcore inside of the rating realm. So the issue that came up that I guess was worth highlighting is there were raid teams that were stacking towards being able to kill bosses faster. I don't think that's a big deal. I don't really care too much from my position if someone kills a boss this week versus next week or the week after because of some bug that happened with rogues or whatever it was. Yes, if I was competing against those people and playing at the high end, I respect and understand your frustration. I would have been there too had I been doing that. Didn't affect me that much. But Mythic Plus wise, I think there's a larger issue here that I'm curious how Blizzard's going to address. Because there's a feat of strength for being in the top 0.1% of rating. And there are people who took advantage of the rogue situation, who got and timed a bunch of plus 16 keys during this window of time to crank their rating really high. Now, you might be like, well, surely by the end of the season, people will be pushing up past that. There's a chance that they won't necessarily be pushing up too far past that. And it creates a situation where you've inflated where that top end Mythic Plus rating is for that 0.1%, and also created a lot more work for teams that may have to now do some extreme pushing to try and make that happen, or take advantage of a similar bug window in order to be able to get beyond that. So I do wonder if there is going to be some adjustments that take place to the Mythic Plus system or to ratings that took advantage of the rogue bug that took place, where rogues were doing 3 million damage, 3 million DPS on a single target fight, when no one should be doing more than like 1.6 or 1.8 at the moment. And that's a large issue. And so I do wonder if they are going to go in and adjust some of the Mythic Plus scores or do something with that achievement to make sure that this remains accessible. Because that to me, out of everything this whole week with all the bugs, that to me is the thing that stood out where I was like, okay, this is a lasting effect. This is potentially a large lasting effect.
Well, we'll talk about some words from Kyvax on that subject a little bit later, but basically the situation here was you had to contrive this bizarre set of circumstances that would then sort of unlock this god mode on your rogue where every finisher would cast with 5 additional combo points. So you could just use all finishers or whatever, because even with no combo points or 1, they would act like they were casting with 5. Max, so it was kind of funny because rogues have been in not a happy spot really since War Within launched. They haven't been in a bad spot necessarily, but most of the rogue mains I know are not like thrilled. They don't think the hero talents are too cool. And one of my long-time rogues switched to warrior. And then he switched. He has since switched back.
So that was a mistake, man. After what they're doing the warrior.
Well, right. Well, that was his first week back. I think was this past week. He went back to rogue, and then it was like it was so busted for that 48-hour period or whatever. And then he switched to rogue, and then they're buffing warrior this week. So all of our warriors were like, thanks for switching back. But so rogues have been in kind of this this middling spot, but like they don't really feel good. The numbers are okay, but they don't feel good. And then they, this patch comes in and they have this ridiculous bug all week. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like tuning was a really hot topic, and people were like, "Oh, how can you put this super expensive cash shop mount in with such a broken patch?" And it's like, I mean, every patch has bugs. Every piece of software that you use anywhere has bugs. Yeah. I'm not excusing them shipping something like this, but I'm saying every patch ever has been bugged. That's inherent in using software, first of all.
And every single one of those patches that was on PTR has had someone report one of those bugs and they didn't get around to fixing it in time. That is right. Also something that has also happened in all of the situations.
It's up to production and how they schedule this stuff and what they prioritize. The thing about like changes not making their way into a new patch, like previous changes, that's something that used to happen a lot. I feel like in the older days of World of Warcraft,
it did used to happen a lot. Yeah,
they tamped that out eventually, so it's kind of weird to see that coming back. But the balance griping outside of the bugs, like I get it, but again, like you can levy that criticism at every single era of World of Warcraft ever. If there's somebody who's not happy with some balance situation, no matter what it is. I mean, I'm not saying that shamans don't need to catch the nerf that they're catching this week. That's not really what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is, there was a sort of outrage about it that was like tied in with the cash shop thing and everything, and it's like, there have been eras where the developers would literally put out blue posts that said, we know this is a problem. We're not happy with it either. We have no current plans to fix it. We'll be addressing it in our next major patch update or next expansion even.
Yeah.
At the very least, I mean, you can feel however you want to feel about the state of balance and sort of how this patch initially landed with class balance. That's, again, you're the customer, and that's up to you. At least they're rolling out big changes tomorrow in NA with maintenance, and they have a track record for years now of like, hey, is this not landing? Is this not working? Well, we're going to hot fix it basically every week until we feel like it's working better.
It's not just that.
We have a patch coming in 2 months, and we're going to rework it in the patch that comes in less than 2 months from now.
Yeah.
So, it's not the world of like, this is going to languish for 6 months, 18 months, whatever. They don't do that anymore. If something isn't working, then they go in and tweak it. So I think that's the silver lining. Yes, the stuff should have landed differently this week, but a bunch of it is going to get fixed, and they're going to keep fixing it.
Yeah, and I would say that even saying fixing it by the end of the week is actually long, in the sense that we typically see something like this go live. By Thursday, we have class balance changes, and then we have larger class balance changes coming the following Tuesday during reset and maintenance. Like they are actively hot fixing in balance changes to the game on a frequent basis to try and get things sorted. So Let's hop into what we did this past week in WoW, and we sort of
Yeah,
shift
that's
into
enough. I
this.
don't. We're not going to do 2 hours on like, oh, everybody's mad about World of Warcraft
no.
last week. Like that's not what we do here. But it would be weird to do the show and not mention any of that stuff at all. So
For sure.
now we're going to get into like actually playing the video game and also like stuff to do this week, which is our favorite thing to do here.
Yeah. So this past week in WoW, I will say that I started off by just trying to learn to play Boomkin again because they did so many changes last Tuesday that I literally was watching. I had 2 or 3 different streams up with different people doing Mythic Plus keys that I was watching to sort of see what they were doing and what talents they were playing with, because they were all actively like, do a key, change more talents, do a key, change more talents. I was just doing sims, like just sitting there being like, well, let's move this talent here, let's move this talent there, let's try this. And then I have the Discord up for Raidbots, which is the sim website that you can go to if you go to Raidbots and do that. I would be watching their Discord for when a new build would come in. I'd change stuff up a bit more and sort of figure out and settle down into what actually felt good to play. And I sort of, did that while I was doing other World Quest stuff and weekly stuff that I wanted to get done, because the anniversary event had launched and there was tons of anniversary stuff to dive into. So I picked up a lot of that. I was sort of starting to make my plans as to how I was going to accomplish these things, because it's a one-time weekly reward, which means like, hey, I can go and do all the world bosses on my main if I want to, but I could also do it on a slightly less geared alt. And then that alt might actually get drops from the world bosses that they need. So I started like figuring out which characters I wanted to do things on, which was actually kind of neat. So I did do what I said I was going to do and started leveling an evoker. And so my evoker was doing the time walking, because that was great. So I get the time walking task done on my character that I'm leveling. And then I had like my priest was out doing the world bosses so that they could try and get the chest from that. My mage was doing the world quest tour to sort of get all the reward caches from that stuff, and like doing the awakening the machine, and all of them are going to go do the theater event regularly still, because the rewards from that are really nice when you can actually get those recipes that can drop out of there. So it was neat to sort of break it all up amongst my stable of alts, and also feel like they're rewarding players if you want to for having a stable of alts. You don't need one. You can go out and do everything on your main, and that's fine. But if you do, in fact, have a stable of alts, because it's warbound rewards, and it's a one-time reward, you actually do feel like there's a benefit to be like, oh, I'll just do this on a different character, and I can do that on a different character. And getting that 12-hour buff on your characters, so you have the 10% increased experience and 10% increased reputation, that was huge for my evoker, because my evoker could do the trivia quest every day, and the trivia quest was like 3/4 of a level, which was like, wow, okay, that's massive. So I really enjoyed that, especially once we had Hallow kickoff on Friday, because then I was also lighting the bonfire, which got me another 10%. So I'm really enjoying the event so far. I don't want to dive too far past that, because I know you're going to want to talk event stuff too before I get into like talking about raid and other things like that. But yeah, I massively dived into this. I flew around on balloons. I did the mount competition stuff. I got all the mount competition achievement stuff. I watched all the stories. I did the pet battles. I haven't gone out and done the photography. I need to go out and go to the different zones and get all the pictures taken in all the different zones and do that. I still need to do that. I did the transmog competition that's there. I killed the world bosses that are there. I have not listened to the stories. I need to go stand by the complaints booth for long enough to hear all the different stories. I need to do that still. That's a cool one. But yeah, there's just a lot. There's a lot to do there. It really does feel like your character is going to a convention. That's actually what it genuinely feels like to me, which I think is very cool.
Yeah, the atmosphere there is great. I think that, I mean, like I said many times on the show before, like they went way over the top. I expected them to do something big for 20, but what they did was so much bigger, I think. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of that stuff. I did the meta achievement to get the mount. That was a thing I did pretty early on. One thing about story time is you need to keep in mind that, like, in order to get the achievement for the meta, it is kind of the most annoying one. So just since you haven't done this, like, pay attention. Don't like AFK out and go, oh, well, I watched the story. Because
you gotta participate.
There's points in the thing where you got to hit like extra action buttons to do like a reaction to the story.
Yeah.
And also, 2 of the 3 stories have a spot where you need to do like 650 or 60 reactions. I think I can't remember.
Oh, when they're throwing
it's a lot
to rotten tomatoes at
rotten apples. Yeah, there's 2 of the 3 stories you have a spot to do that, so you can rack up like a decent amount of reactions. But the Arthas Lich King story, there isn't anything like that. So this is going to take you a few rotations. You'll get the achievement for having seen all 3 stories before you get the achievement for doing all the reactions, which is whatever it is. But everything else you could do like really fast. You just got to kind of hang out down there for a little bit. It is nice that the different events rotate every 15 minutes, so there's always something to do or something coming up pretty soon. See, I did that like mostly just all on my main because it's just easier to keep track of, and it's not like you get any super good power rewards. Like the alts that I've been playing, you know, they're around heroic raid geared from delves and stuff, so it's like this is not really an event for gear unless you get into like heroic BRD rating or something. It's just more for fun and for stuff to collect. So really busy week for me with outdoor event stuff with Anniversary and Hallow's End starting up. I managed to get 2 delves in on the monk last night, like after everything kind of broke up. So it's like I have one thing.
I haven't touched that yet, man.
2 on the druid.
I haven't touched that yet.
Like the alts are just like, they're so low priority this week, but you know, we'll rotate them back in. I'm going to try to get 2 in there on the druid just so I have something to open tomorrow. But like, that like all that time that I would have been spending on my alts and so far since expansion became Anniversary time. It became Hallow's End time. There's just so much stuff to do. And I really think what they did with the Anniversary stuff is pretty great. Like it's just low impact. You know, you just go out there and just hang out and do stuff. It's all kind of self-explanatory. The only thing was the Chromie scenario kept crashing on me on Tuesday. I was trying to get it done before raid, and like we would get to a part after you moved, you know, you would like fly over, then like Chromie would get stuck or something and the thing would crash. Like we'd all crash out to the login screen, load back in. It would put us all back in the scenario, but it would give us a message that we weren't in the groups. We weren't in the instances party. And so then we'd all get kicked to the graveyard and after a minute and then have to start it over. So that was kind of frustrating. And like the Chromie scenario is kind of a big nothing. If you're like a Chromie fan, it's some cool, you get to hang out with Chromie and do stuff. And, you know, there's some fun VO, but it's not like there's a whole lot of gameplay there, but it's fine. But yeah, that was the only kind of hang up I had with it was like, man, I wish this would stop crashing so I could just get credit for having done it. But
well, you're doing it day one, Jason. That's what happens when you do it day one, right?
Yep, you never know.
Yeah.
All kinds of weird stuff was happening on day one, but it's fine. You know, I had a great time with it. I think like kind of the weekly ask for the Anniversary stuff is not that bad. A lot of it is stuff that I'd be doing anyway. And some of it is stuff that I don't mind adding into the rotation because it feels worth it to get more tokens.
Right.
And the Anniversary stuff is pretty light and fun and just kind of celebrates the game and the community. So it's like what I'm looking forward to doing that until I get the stuff that I need out of the event. And it's just, man, just an absurd amount of just new, like mostly just fun stuff dropping in this week into the loop.
Yeah, so as far as Hallow's End goes, I cranked a lot of that out. I did all of the trick-or-treating on my main to make sure I picked up all the stuff I didn't grab last year on top of the stuff that's there this year. I think I'm 60 tokens away now, and I started grabbing those on my Evoker. And so that's the other big tip I want to give for everyone is if you're planning on leveling a character, you can level them just by trick-or-treating because it's a big amount of experience per trick-or-treat. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to do Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor on my leveling alt that I'm going to do. I'm going to use the toys that are out there to get all the flight paths. So literally your day is like, hey, put on a good movie, hang out with your significant other, whatever it is, and just keep clicking on flight paths inside Eastern Kingdom and Kalimdor to sort of fly around to do all the trick-or-treating there on an alt. You will level that character a lot just doing that, particularly if you pick up the 2-hour buff from lighting the bonfire, as well as the 12-hour buff from doing the Anniversary event. And if you have obviously the 20 or 25 or whatever it is percent for however many alts you have, depending on where you're at with your alt stable, you can level a character up a lot just by trick-or-treating on that character and be earning all those rewards towards completing the event and having everything purchased from the event, which was really nice. So yeah, that's how I'm going to do the last 60 or so tokens is just trick-or-treating on my Evoker. and that'll buy me the cloak that I didn't have. I had the hood. I picked that up on my main. I didn't have the cloak, so I need to buy the cloak still. That's the last thing I have remaining. I did buy the Trick or Treats little like trick or treating bag, the like pumpkin jack o' lantern bag. That's the word I was looking of. It's very cool. That's a very, very cool offhand. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah,
did a really good job with that. So that I did pick that up really early on. It was the first thing I got for 150. The only thing I'll mention as the dailies and stuff go is the putting out the fires is broken. I don't think you can actually complete it. Me and one other person managed to put all of the fires out, and there was no fire left, and we didn't get completion. And you're like, okay, this is like we weren't in the same group. We were just two people who happened to be there doing it. And both of us were like saying each other like, okay, did you get it? No, I didn't get it. Okay, what's going on? Why didn't it happen? Like it just literally couldn't get it to work in two different locations. One was Karanos and then one was Goldshire. So in both cases, I'm like, there's something wrong with that quest. Don't bother with that quest. That one's not worth it. Don't try and do it. You'll just waste your time. But outside of that, certainly go out and do them. Don't forget.
I've had both situations. I've had what you've described, and I've also had, well, the fires are still burning, but I got credit for putting out the fires, and then the horseman landed and we fought it. So,
all right.
Yeah, something weird is going on with Stop the Fires, but also, like, it seems to be, like, constantly triggering. It used to be about every half hour or whatever.
Yeah.
And now it's just, like, rotating through. So maybe there's something just completely wrong there. But
could be.
I've had both ends of the spectrum happen to me this week.
So that was certainly part of my rotation, was doing a lot of the Hallow's End stuff. I will say that the Warlords of Draenor stuff, I'd forgotten just how good that is. It is basically go to your garrison, pick up the 5 quests that are there, fly down to like maybe a 1 minute dynamic flight away from your garrison, blow up a bunch of ads and stuff that are there, which do scale to your level, so they do have like a couple million hit points on the ads that are there. Blow those up, go back to your garrison, and you essentially have a currency you can trade in for tricky treats or to buy other things for your garrison if you want. Mine is like permanently decorated for Halloween. It just lives there like that. But yes, so you can trade them in. You get 5 tricky treats just for doing that. So that felt really good to do. And you can go out and do those. So be sure you're knocking that out as well. I will say I forgot that there wasn't trick-or-treating in a couple of expansions and got there and was like, this is very sad. So a good way to sort of tell which expansions have trick-or-treating if you're looking for it is to look through your achievements for Hallow's End, because it tells you that the trick-or-treating of and that area. So Northrend, for example, it actually has the like, hey, here's the locations is still there. Even if you completed the achievement, you can go back and look at the completed achievement and see where you need to go and see whether or not something was there. So you're not going to an expansion and going, oh, there's actually no trick-or-treating here. They never added this. That's a nice tip for folks to get out and take advantage of that. But yeah, I think I think this has been a lot of fun. I've definitely, and I said this in a tweet, I've played more World of Warcraft in the past 5 weeks than I have in years. And it has been like a steady flow. Like every day I wake up and I'm like, oh, I got to get online for, at least just after 11 a.m. so I can do all my professions. I can go around all my characters and do all the professions to try and be sure I get all the catch-up points and everything like that. And, I can go and do this event that's taking place, or I can do delves, or I can do, like, there's just so many things to do in the game right now that I'm enjoying doing. Like, not chores, but things that I'm enjoying doing that it's got me in the game right. Like, even going, hey, I'm just going to get on and fly around and gather for an hour and a half and I'm just gathering herbs. Like, that to me is still a really good time. I sort of throw up a stream or talk to someone or whatever it is and just fly around and do that is still an enjoyable experience. And the way they've done gathering professions with having things like mulch for when you're doing herbalism and having things like the special nodes, I think does make it more dynamic and interesting if you want it to be. So my mining person has maxed out easy mines, which means that my mining person then uses their, whatever it is ability on the easy mine nodes, the overload. Thank you. The elemental overload on the nodes, and the nodes then explode into a bunch of smaller nodes that you can then mine up before the large bomb goes off. And obviously by skilling up my profession, I then have higher deftness, which means I then gather those nodes faster so I can get more of those nodes. And because my miner is a monk, my monk can transcend in and out of the node, which is really nice. So I can set up a transcendence and then overload the node so it explodes and there's ore everywhere. And I can then gather the ore right up to the last possible second of the bomb going off and transcend out and be safe from the bomb explosion. Like there's
Nice.
just like there's gameplay to it now from where it was before, right?
Well, yeah, they've added so much texture to those systems, and I mean, I think that was really the thing that made dragon riding click in Dragonflight, and then make it the new standard. Is that okay, yes, you could let players fly and move around the world like absurdly fast, but what if you seeded all kinds of interesting stuff like all over the world? Just nodes everywhere, and nodes have different properties, and there's just way more texture to all that gameplay. Plus, there's treasures everywhere, and the treasures contain things that are incredibly valuable, and there's different ways to interact with the treasures, and they do different things, like snuffling, adding so much variety to the outdoor world. Yeah, I mean, there's just fun stuff to do in the game everywhere in all these different avenues that isn't just like, okay, repeat this thing over again today to get, some gradual power, which I like the gradual power grind, but this is a different flavor of just like keeping the game fresh or interesting or feeling rewarding, I think is really the biggest thing. Yeah, I'm done with Hallow's End actually for the year because I was caught up. They put in 4 new things, which we'll get into more, but I got all the new stuff. I did a bunch of Horsemen. I got the new Mog set. That was a cool addition. Like if you do Horsemen on any character level 10 and above, you get a loot-filled pumpkin this year.
Yep.
And it can contain pieces of a new transmog set that make you look like a harvest golem. It's like a recolor of the one from the trading post. So
yeah, and
that's really nice. You can just bang that out in a few days.
Yeah, I'll emphasize this is per character, which means that you can, like for me, I did this on 5 characters a day, and was like I finished that mog set super fast.
Yeah,
which
you
was
get
really
5 different
nice.
pieces, right? Like it's that's a really cool addition. I love how they did that with adding that into the mix for Horsemen. So Hallow's End, we'll get into it a little bit more in terms of like what the new stuff is and what you should be doing. But yeah, definitely, I kind of front loaded it, right? Like I'm done with it now. I like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I went kind of ham. I did a bunch of trick or treating on a bunch of different tunes.
Yeah.
There is a new trick or treating achievement for
Kazalgar
bucket, so which is cool because then it's like, okay, I can also herb while I'm trick or treating or whatever. Love Hallow's End. I mean, there's so much stuff, man. There's so much stuff to collect from it. So hopefully people are digging into that and getting the stuff that they want because it's they add stuff like almost every year, I feel like, and it starts to get a little overwhelming in terms of the tricky treat prices, but it is like one of the signature WoW events. So yeah, definitely. I think my time in there is done now, but I had a great time with the additions this year.
Yeah, me too. All right, as far as Mythic Plus goes, I did my 10 keys early in the week again, which was interesting because a lot of people were learning how to play their classes again, which made the keys really interesting to do. I will say this affix is still one that I'm not super thrilled about and don't super enjoy. It still feels like it's something that is just not where it should be. There's something up with this thing still that I just don't dig as much as I would have liked to.
The upside doesn't feel great.
It doesn't.
It's not that hard to deal with in most comps. Like most people are eager to drop their AoE thing that breaks all the crystals or whatever. Like, cool, great. Like I love getting 9 or 10 stacks of it without anybody having to think too hard. But it's like, I think I said this on a recent episode, like if you like haste, you already have a high haste build, so you don't benefit that much from the haste buff because it's not like it's like a very mini hero. It's like a tiny hero. It's not like a full hero, even stacked up. So it's like it's good, but I don't know. It doesn't feel super impactful, but it doesn't ask a lot of you either. So I think overall, like I had a pretty good week of Mythic Plus. Like I think this may be tempering sort of my lack of, I don't know, intensity about some of the bugs and the balance with this patch is that like I thought Mythic Plus felt fine this week overall. Like the upside of the affix is underwhelming, but I got multiple plus 11s done in time, so starting to push some rating up over 2600.
Nice. Got
some new portals I didn't have yet. Like I'm starting to do higher keys with some people other than like my core, like hardcore, pumpers who like we're pushing these keys. We're getting this done early this season, right? Like I have that crew and we kind of play over here, but then on like raid nights and stuff, I grab other people. And this week was the first time I really rotated in some people who maybe have been struggling or haven't kind of got over the hump yet, and we got 10s or even 11s done. So that felt really good. I mean, part of it is just like the people that I do play with regularly, when we rotate other people in, like we are feeling more confident, more comfortable. We're starting to get like to those higher item level echelons. So it's like, okay, we will guide you through here. Just, do your part and we'll get through. So that's nice. That's where I kind of, we're not quite at like mid season yet, but we're getting close. And that's where I want to be. I want to be able to just do 10s and 11s, man. I don't want to do 8s and 9s.
Yeah. I think you sort of hit the nail on the head in that I don't feel like the benefit from doing this affix is something that is a pop or a snap or like it jumps out when you actually get it. And I think that's something that I expect. Like, as much as it's easy to handle, and yes, there's a lot of people who can deal with it, and I love how it's dealt with. I love that so many classes have so many different ways of effectively doing this affix is great. Like, I'm thrilled about how mechanically how it works. But I feel like the effect of it isn't something that I'm like, oh yeah, that's great, we got the affix now, or oh, we need to really make sure we time this out well for the affix so we can have the extra benefit going into whatever pull we're doing. Like, doesn't feel like we're doing that, and it doesn't feel like we're doing that because it just is kind of like a thing. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people who are doing keys that are in that 8 and 9 range, and I know there's not a lot of people who are doing that in general, but I think people who are doing keys up there probably are already close to that haste cap point, and so receiving a whole bunch of haste isn't like, wow, this feels really different for my class. Whereas maybe if I was doing 2s and 3s or whatever it is, something much farther down, I might feel that a lot more as that haste sort of comes in when I'm still trying to gear. I don't know. It for me, it just doesn't have that like pow that I expect it to have when you've accomplished the task that has been set out for you for the bargain. So yeah, that's just one of the
This is why I generally don't like the kind of kiss curse things in Mythic Plus. I know it's something that players request a lot, but I think they're hard to pull off well. Yeah. And I think in this season, what we've seen is like the curses may be a bit too heavy-handed and the kisses are not sweet enough, right? Like, we're just not seeing that upside, dude. Like, I don't feel like, but whatever. I think M plus is in a pretty decent spot. I need to get my myth track in. And so, that's my only concern at this point is getting my 10s or 11s done for the week.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, as far as rating goes, for those who might be curious, we did not get Ovanax last Monday, and we did not get Ovanax last night. So it is still maintaining its status, and we will try and get it tonight. And we'll see how that all goes. I'm starting to believe that the issue with the fight, the large, I mean, there's two issues our team suffers from. Our team suffers from melee standing in swirlies, which either results in melee deaths or results in a lot of healing drain, which then drains mana, which then creates mana issues late in the fight for healers. So I think in general, the swirlies have a number of problems. Number one being the boss's body is very large, and the swirlies can spawn underneath of the boss's body, and then you can't see where the swirlies are, and you can get killed by them or hurt by them very easily. There's a lot of graphical effects that are happening on this fight, particularly in melee, when you have classes like Frost Death Knights and other classes that have large graphical effects that they do. And even if you turn those down, you are still dealing with a lot of stuff happening on your screen at the same time. It's a very coordinated fight that forces people to have to move around a lot because we're moving around not only within the sections, but also to different eggs and what's happening with eggs. And so having the spawning, raining from the sky swirlies is something that is challenging for people not to get hit by. And worst of all, in my opinion, they can spawn not only during eggs when people are trying to break eggs, which are very finicky to break. You have to make sure that the center of the egg is within your small radius circle that you're given. And it needs to be a small radius circle because otherwise you're always overlapping your partner and doing like 3 million damage to your partner, which is not great. So, which we end up just doing anyways because we want to guarantee the egg breaks, because if the egg doesn't break, it's a wipe more so than if you hit your partner for 3 million damage. So that's a problem. And I feel that the fact that the swirlies can spawn inside of the eggs, like they can literally land with half the circle sticking out or a quarter of the circle sticking out of an egg, means that people who are stacking up on the eggs who can't move have swirlies spawning on top of them that they can't see until the egg breaks, and then they instantly die. I died in a 0.8 second window because my buddy overlapped with me because we were doing Parasite Break, which are the smaller eggs, overlapped with me while we were breaking at the same time as a swirl was coming in from the sky that I couldn't see on the ground because it was under the egg. And so the moment the egg broke, I saw the swirl and died. It was in 0.8 seconds. And I was like, okay, if this is the design of this boss, they need to fix some things. And one of the top things I would say is when egg break debuffs are going out, do not have swirls. That should just be a thing. They should not have swirls happening when the egg breaks are happening. It just those things shouldn't overlap, because that's when the most movement has to happen and the most coordination has to happen on that fight. And that tends to be the biggest, most punishing part of the fight. Is you go, okay, we're gonna have the egg break if you overlap with someone, hit you really hard, at the same time as stuff is raining from the sky that you can't see while you're trying to coordinate what you're doing. And it's like, okay, this is a problem. So I think some fixes I'd recommend to the devs very much would be reducing the damage on the overlap when you're popping eggs. If you overlap somebody, I think that would be a really nice change, because the other thing that kills people is that overlap happening at the same time as a tank debuff falls off, which AoEs the whole raid. And so you can see people take 3 to 4, if not 5 million damage inside a 1 second window as well, if a tank debuff drops right after eggs are broken or right as eggs break, before the web debuff goes out that does a ton of damage to you, by the way. So I have logs where I was breaking an egg, went left from breaking the egg to start to move towards the healers, got the web debuff because that happened within a second of me breaking the egg, had to use health stone, health pot, and renewal to break the absorb shield that I'd gotten during the phase where you're going to go over to the egg stuff. And that got me just high enough on health that I could shapeshift into bear, which then broke my web debuff and put me down to 10% hit points. And if I hadn't health stone, health pot, and renewaled, I would have died shapeshifting into barrel, or if someone had dispelled me early, I would have died shapeshifting into bear. And you're like, okay, like, I feel like there's too many windows where it's just too tight on this boss. And we saw this with other raid tiers as well, but the fact that we still have so many teams hitting the wall and the wall is still this tall is a problem on this boss. So I'm not necessarily saying, hey, they need to do massive nerfs to this boss. I think in general, they just need to make the boss more forgiving in some of its mechanics and what it's doing. And that could be a lot of different things. They don't want to change timings on abilities, just reduce the damage that the swirlies do if you stand in them. Like, just take them down from being 2.5 to 2.8 million damage to being like 800k if you stand inside a swirly. It's still a hit. It's still a hit you don't want people taking regularly. It's still something people would pay attention to, but it is not a one-shot level mechanic if you are also overlapping with anything else inside of the fight. If a tank debuff breaks when you hit by a swirly, you die.
Yeah, if it's going to land in the spot where, the affected players can't move because they have to do some other job, then that's only fair. Yeah.
So that's where my mind goes with it. But yeah, so I'm hoping to see that happen for a lot of teams who are still on this boss. But I'm also hoping we kill it tonight. We've had some deep third section pulls. We've had, if you're looking at logs, purple pulls where we're pulling the boss and getting them, sub 20% or close to 20%. Like, the boss will die soon, as soon as we have a good pull. But it really does feel like we've been in that realm of, we just need one good pull for a while now. And you're like, okay, if that's where we're sitting for a while now, then we really do need Blizz to address some things with this. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. That's rating. That's what rating was.
Yeah, so raid for us was all over the place. Like, Tuesday, okay, patch day, servers came up earlier than they said, but still pretty late in the day, so people weren't really like settled in, and the game was misbehaving quite a bit. We started with normal 7 and 8 because I had the ID stashed. I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this, and I'm not getting any feedback from my team. Like, I don't care about doing normal 7 and 8, but I assume somebody might, because it's pretty good loot.
If you want Spy Masters, you want the ring, there's tons of things out of there people want. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, but I don't know if everybody who wants it has it or what at this point, and nobody's really telling me. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to call an audible tomorrow, but it worked out fine. Like, we had time to look at Queen on Tuesday with the full group, but the state of the servers were just a mess. And after 2 polls, we had time to maybe keep going a little bit, but I was like, let's just cut our losses on this. Like, one, in addition to the regular performance issues and like the BNet spam of like guildies logging in and logging out that like locks the game up for a second over and over again, especially at prime time. There were also some visual bugs on Queen, like the poison bubbles that pop you up over the Venom Nova thing. Yeah. They were spawning without their like circle around the perimeter. So like the mechanic would still work, but it was very difficult to tell like where was safe to stand.
Whether you were in it or not. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just, we saw that happen twice in a row and it was like, okay, we'll see you later. We'd pull the boss and like liquefy would go out, which is the thing that puts poison everywhere. And the cast would finish and then nothing would happen And then like 2 to 3 seconds later, then Liquefy would land on the ground and the boss would just be standing in it, even though the tanks would be 12 yards away out of melee or whatever to move her out of the Liquefy. So yeah, 2 pulls on that were like, okay, we'll come back tomorrow. So came back Wednesday with the full group. And I think we killed it in like 1 or 2 pulls with like 29 or 30. So that was awesome. That was our first kill where I didn't have to cut down to like 22.
Right.
So bunch of new AOTCs for that, which felt really nice. Great. And it was really nice and tidy. So that was cool. And I was glad we could do that. I do feel like a responsibility to give people their AOTCs. So that's, one of my main jobs, I feel like. So that was great. And then, we had to cut the group down, obviously, to get to 20, did some Mythic Olgrax. That was like 1 or 2 pulls to clean that back up.
Yeah.
No problems. Like, I think people that have some seat time on that fight now are just confident. So it's a cool fight. It's not like mega punishing. It should be an easy re-clear.
Putting him next to where his food is like the biggest thing on that fight that people need to do to push over the edge.
It makes all the difference, just because then you're backed up to one edge. It makes it really easy to see where the charges are. All the ads will come to you. Just be patient, and then you can quickly AoE them down and feed him very quickly. So
and you can
that was cool.
Have people with immunities run around and clear up a bunch of webs during the feed period, so you have a clear path to do the feed. Like, there's a lot of things you can do there to make
and that's definitely the time to use them too. Like, that's, since you mentioned that, like, because people are like, oh, I can bubble through it or I can cloak it or whatever. You can. It's not really worth doing it in main phase though. Like, use the acid for that after you move, like for an intermission, then use those immunities to clean up the area you're going to fight in next, and then just use the acid for the new stuff. So that worked really good. And then we're looking at Mythic Bloodbound Horror, which, dude, the servers were just killing us. Like, it was every 2 seconds we get those micro pauses and the chat spam for, guildies logging in. I don't know how WoW works. I don't know what causes that, but it's been getting worse and worse all the time, and it was horrendous on Wednesday. It cost us so many pulls, but we did end up killing it, and we killed it pretty cleanly at that. I don't know how many pulls it took. Not many, because we had, it was only one night on it, and we had to start up the raid, and we had done Queen, then we had back out, do Mythic Olgrax. So I mean, that was super impressive. We did a great job just locking that in, and Mythic is interesting because the spacing on the ads is so much more dynamic, and so it's hard. It's actually tanking. It's kind of hard to figure out, like, all right, how are we going to line up the beams and just communicating with the other tank and their team, and but it's a cool fight. It should be something that we can continue to just re-clear. So really good time with that. And then we did some BRD last night, and that was weird. Like, I like what they did with BRD as a raid, but you can only bring 15, right? So I obviously have more than 15 people trying to do anything on any given night. So we split into 2 groups of 11, and I had some like undergeared people with me, including a buddy of mine who really hasn't played much endgame WoW at all in like a decade. But I'm thinking, like, well, it's a normal raid. It's an anniversary event. It's the thing they want you to do for the tokens. And, like, I'm super overgeared, and I have, like, 4 super overgeared people in here. Like, we're just going to smash this. And we kind of didn't. I mean, obviously, we had to learn some stuff. It is, you have to, like, figure out, like, okay, how does this mechanic work in the context of this raid or whatever. I thought it was cool, but I don't think that we're going to be prioritizing that on the typical raid schedule going forward. Maybe if people want to do it on like a Saturday night or something, like maybe we'll throw a group together. But nobody is like fiending for the loot in there. I'm not hearing that from people like, oh, I need this trinket from this thing, or I just need 40 coffer keys so I can buy it. Like, I'm not getting that vibe from my team, and I feel like our time would be better spent in Mythic Palace, to be honest. Like, I think we can get to 4 of 8 if we can keep the group together and get polls going, and then you're talking about your gilded crests are done for the week. If you do heroic 7, 8, and Mythic 1 through 4, you're talking about full row of myth gear in the vault, or two choices, I mean to say. So, like. That seems way more valuable. Plus, the gear in there is just better. There's some really nice stuff from those first 4 bosses.
There's the third boss weapon, 4th boss
cloak. That 4th boss cloak is great. Like, so I don't know. BRD is like it was cool. I liked going in there and seeing how they kind of translated it into a raid, but I don't feel like we had a good time, and maybe that's my fault as the leader, because I put a group together that really was not ready for what we were looking at. And again, we're just doing normal. Like we're not even getting into heroic. It was much harder than normal Palace was the first week normal Palace was out.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's in a weird spot.
I didn't dive into BRD mainly because the general feedback I was consistently receiving from everyone was it's overtuned. It doesn't really feel that much fun because it's so punishing. I'd rather be doing something else with my time at the moment than this, but I want to get the tokens, so I feel bad. Like I have to do this. And you're like, okay, that sounds like it's a chore and not fun and not like a super enjoyable experience. And so we did see some nerfs, and we're seeing more nerfs happening with BRD. I think for a limited time anniversary event, the biggest concern I had going into this was I don't want this to be another progression raid at all. At all. Like for anyone, like for no team should this be another big progression raid, particularly on normal. So it was genuinely disappointing to hear that that's what sort of was happening, because it's like, okay, you shouldn't be saying, hey, we have this raid that's out right now and has been out for a month that people have been raiding in, and we're going to release another raid that is like on par, if not more difficult than the current one. And you're like, well, okay, but like, what do you want us? You just want us to try and raid both at the same time? Like, teams are going to start making decisions as to what they're putting their time towards because they only have so much time a week. This needs to be a fun, enjoyable experience you can hop in with people and have a good time rolling through it, as opposed to, no, this is like on the same par as the raid, as the current one that's out. And you're like, okay, that to me is wrong. It's wrong. It should be like time walking. Like time walking to me is tuned towards, hey, we can get in, we can get through this. I can do a Dire Mall classic time walking thing in like 10 to 15 minutes. And it's a great time and I have a good time and we smash through it. And that's fun. This should be a raid that you can get through in like 45 minutes to an hour and should be a good time. Let's smash through it. Let's see some fun mechanics. This is neat. That's what this should be. It shouldn't be
like let's revisit the space. Like, hey, remember BRD, man? Oh, remember this guy? Remember this room? Like, I don't know where it sits. I don't know what it's supposed to do right now. And I think, I'm just going to be doing Emperor on LFR for my weekly tokens and calling it a week. I mean, I'll do it. I'll run it on an off night if we have like 9 other people interested in doing it, certainly. But like I think it's detrimental to the team to prioritize this over anything in Palace.
I agree,
including like alt night Palace would be more favorable. Agreed. I think so.
Yeah, we do that currently. That's how we get our 7 of 8 lockouts. Is we do a raid that starts at 6 p.m. on our normal raid night, and people who want to come in, and in about 45 minutes we clear the first 6 bosses in heroic. And people can bring whatever they want, and then we literally take an hour off before raid starts, and then we get reform back up and do raid at 8. That's what we do. And so we have a 45-minute alt run that goes in and kills the first 6 bosses, and it's a great time.
That's just so much more lucrative, I think, than BRD. And I mean, luckily, I don't think they really seeded any loot that too many people were jazzed on in there, so that kind of helps, So it might just be an LFR project, but. Yeah, so that was BRD for the week. And then the other thing I wanted to just mention, like I have been playing Rumble regularly since last summer, since like beta.
Yep.
And we're coming up on 1 year of Rumble being live. And I had been running a guild like with my friends and WoW guildies and stuff. And it was low participation and stuff. And guild participation is a big part of that game. Our buddy Multizord kept hitting me up like, hey, man, I do have a spot. I could get you a spot. Like, I'm in a very active guild. You should think about it. So I talked to my friends from my WoW guild, and I was like, I got to go somewhere else. Like, you guys don't care, do you? And they were like, no, we don't really play anyway. So I moved over there at the beginning of this season that's going on in Rumble. And then this week was the first time the raid came around. You can only do the raid with your guildies, right? You play with one other player. Yeah. So Multi and I got together the other day, and we did Molten Core together, and he carried me. I did okay, but he knew all the strats. He told me, okay, use these units and whatever. Just do this is how this works. You do this. And I said, okay, I can do it. We got all the way through it. I got the Rag Mini unlocked and got all the bonuses. You get super cool bonuses from doing it. It was really fun. Like I think they did a great job translating those Molten Core bosses into this kind of, that's 2D cool. Like strategy type of game, and we had a great time doing it. You have to coordinate. You have to like line up your minis so you have like synergy and you can counteract what the bosses do, and the rewards are super lucrative. So we had a great time with that. So thanks, Multi, for carrying me straight through that. And yeah, we'll have to. The only thing that's weird is like you can only do the raid like once a month. Basically, it's only open for 1 out of every 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. But it's so lucrative that your units would just become incredibly powerful if you were farming the raid weekly. So I guess they want to kind of get you into some other activities, but still really enjoying Rumble, and it was fun doing some multiplayer stuff in there. So just wanted to I mean, that was a raid that I did this week. So there you go.
Nice. All right. With that, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the Arena Skirmish bonus event, which means the Sign of the Skirmisher buff is up, increasing your honor gains from Arena Skirmishes by 50%, as well as a quest to win 10 of them, which gets you some conquest and some honor, actually a lot of honor, which is nice. This also would sync up potentially with some of the anniversary rewards, because some of those PvP quests tend to give you a reward for the week, as far as a coin goes, something like that. So might be an extra bit of motivation getting in there for folks to check out the Arena Skirmish bonus event this month, or this week. So I guess I could say this month, because guess what? It's going to end in a couple of days. And so you could check it out for the rest of the month if you wanted to. But that'll run obviously into November for next week. We also have the Call of the World Soul going on for folks who want to get out there and do the objectives outside of the inn in Dornegal. You want to be sure you're doing that. You basically go outside the inn in Dornegal, and there's like either a quest there to pick up the Call of the World Soul for world quests completion, or snuffling, or dungeons, or awakening the machine, or Severed Threads Pact, or Theater Troop, or delves, or whatever it is. You pick up that quest. There is also potentially the quest over by Bran Bronzebeard for other delve activities. This week was getting these fragments off the end boss of a delve out of the reward caches, and if you got all of those, then that got you your spark piece that you needed. So if you didn't get your spark this week, that was this past week, that was probably because you didn't end up doing that part of the delve quest. But you can still earn sparks from things like completing a Mythic Plus dungeon out of the last chest. If you're trying to get some catch-up mechanics going for that, you can farm up a bunch of sparks through doing things like that if you've been missing out on those.
Yeah, I'm starting to think this is a 3-week rotation. So I think this is going to be the Call of the World Soul choose 1 week. It seems to go a choose 1 week, and then a Titan Fragments week from world bosses and world treasures and dungeon bosses and all that stuff, and then a Delves week. So yeah. I that seems to be what the rotation is like so far. So I think this is going to be a choose 1 week, but we'll see. He's
taking a shot in the dark. We'll see.
Yeah, we don't have like the full picture, but it seems to be a 3-week rotation for that weekly Pinnacle Cache and Spark Fragment and all that. So that's what I'm expecting, but it could be a whole other thing that we do this week. Yeah, I don't know.
We do know that the anniversary event rewards are tied into the world events as well. So if you're someone who's like, hey, I want to do the special assignment world quests, or I'm going to do the Theater Troop, or I'm going to do the Awakening the Machine, or Spreading the Light, or the Severed Thread Packs, or the World Soul Memories, all of those things also grant you tokens towards the anniversary event. And on top of that, obviously completing the first 4 of these gets you a reward, so they're worthwhile doing at least 4 of these a week to be able to get a reward out of those reward caches. So be sure you're doing that. That's per character for those rewards. However, the actual tokens are per warband. So that's where I was saying like, hey, I'm doing Awakening the Machine on a character that, essentially I'm still leveling up and want to get some extra experience on, that kind of thing. I'm doing the Spreading the Light on particular characters that I want to actually get that reward in on as an easy way to do that. I'm doing the Theater Troop on all my characters, but I'm also only doing the special assignment world quests on certain characters, like that kind of thing. I'm starting to sort of break out and balance out as far as what you want to do. So just, in general, do 4 of them. The 4 I would always recommend is Theater Troop, Spreading the Light, Severed Threads Pact, and then probably the special assignment world quests are your best bet for those sorts of things. Everything, the Awakening the Machine and the World Soul Memories, I just don't find the rewards are large enough or impactful enough. However, there is a mount from Awakening the Machine. So if you have not gotten that mount yet out of there, doing the Awakening Machine every week does get you that chance to get a mount out of the rewards for there. So you might be farming that.
True, and if you need like resonance crystals or it's actually a decent source of currency. It's not incredible, but it's a scenario you have to go do, and it takes a few minutes. But yeah, I mean, it's just typical outdoor stuff. The cool thing is the way this is lined up, right? Like, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm almost done even caring about any of the outdoor stuff, because I'm almost done with most of my renowns and everything. Mm-hmm. But now with it tied in the anniversary event, it's like, okay, there's that extra motivation or that extra reward for investing the time. So It's kind of nice how that's dovetailing as the initial expansion launch content is starting to age.
Yeah, typically we also see another thing you can do every week is the dungeon quest, which gets you a large token towards reputation for a certain faction. How I always have been doing these for the past chunk of time is I do a follower dungeon. I literally pick up the quest, because often the quest isn't part of the Mythic Plus pool. This past week it was with Stone Vault, so you could have done it that way. But if you want to, you can pick up this quest, queue for that dungeon as a follower dungeon, and then just either be aggressive and pull tons of things onto your follower dungeon group and punish them if you really want to, or you can, sort of go along at the own pace and get that done. That will complete that quest. And it's a great way to do it without having to worry about if for example, dealing with other human beings is not something you enjoy doing very much inside World of Warcraft, or putting together a group might be something you might not enjoy very much in World of Warcraft. So I can get this done in I think I did Stone Vault in 12 minutes. Because I basically just I took my massively geared druid and went in and I will pull things, and then just aggressively pulled through that place. And you'd watch the followers dynamically try and keep up and do things. And occasionally one would die. Occasionally one would die and have to come back. But in general, it was pretty great. So that went really smooth, and it's a great way to get that reputation thing. Yeah, you mentioned renown. I am now max renown for everything except for one faction, and that one faction I am almost 24 on. So this week should be 25 for them, and I should just be done with renown. I will say I've earned a couple of Paragon bags now for different factions, and all of them have been garbage as far as what I get out of them, and it's been really unfortunate. The biggest bonus I got is I think I got 2,000 resonance crystals out of it, on top of some pet battle tokens and some random small other things that are not worthwhile. No gold at all. I do feel like Paragon bags need a boost. They've needed a boost since we left Legion. They need to continue to make these things good.
They used to be great. I mean, when it came in Legion, they were incredible. And in BFA, they were still pretty good. And then they just nosedived. Yeah. And now they're basically loot boxes in a mid 2010s shooter. You open up, you get a bunch of sprays. Basically, is what the equivalent is, and it's so much work to get there. So hopefully they get changed someday. Yeah, give us some real gold out of there. If you don't want to put unique stuff in there like the pets and mounts that used to be in there because it's too high of a bar for the average player to do, fine. But then give us some real heavy duty currency, because otherwise what's the point of even having it? I mean, I guess it's something if you're still doing the content, but if you're trying to earn, if you actively go to earn one, you're I want to see what it's like, and then you open it and it's that. It's okay, well, now this discourages me from actually doing any more of this.
It immediately made me go, okay, as far as once I hit 25 renown, I can just check out of the system. That's really what it made me feel like, as opposed to going, oh wow, man, I could just keep doing my daily loop and earn 15,000 gold every time I get a Paragon bag. That suddenly would be extra, oh, okay. Yeah. That covers my consumables for the week. That's great. That to me would be a worthwhile thing in that situation. So
an extra 40 to 60K a month or something, you know, on average would be nice.
Right, it'd be nice. So.
And that's what Paragon bags were supposed to do when they came in. It was encourage you or reward you for continuing to invest in outdoor world content. And they've just missed the mark on that for 3 expansions in a row now.
Yeah. So I would comment that I hope they throw some sort of buff or benefit into that. Man, the ones I got from Severed Threads were the worst. The Severed Threads Paragon bags, I've gotten 2 of them now. They are garbage. I think I got one. I got 1,000 kedge from one of them, and I got a reputation bonus. I opened up the Paragon bag, and it gave me more rep towards Severed Threads. And I was okay. Why? What? It was weird. It was here's 2,000 more reputation to Severed Threads for earning 10,000 reputation with Severed. Thanks. Okay. Weird.
Yeah, it's buy 10 sandwiches and get a free one.
Yeah, that's it was weird.
It's like a sandwich loyalty card.
It was weird. So that was strange. But so I'm hoping they invest some time in that. Okay, PvP wise, we have Arathi Blizzard up as our brawl, which is Arathi Basin, but with essentially it's winter time. So the water has frozen over. There is snow obscuring your vision from the lumber mill down to the blacksmith. And it affects the whole dynamic of the battle round. So this is a neat one. It's something that I wish they did more of, weather effects. I love when it rains in Dornegal. That's always really cool to be wow, it's raining. This is different. Cool, great. I love weather effects. I would love if we had snow in some of the areas that just came in randomly and had like a blizzard or a snowstorm in an area. And it basically didn't affect your character at all. It just affected your ability to see certain distances inside a small area. That would be fine. I wouldn't have an issue with that. So I think that would be a cool thing to do. And they could do more with weather effects. But this is where they first experimented with it. And they haven't gone too far since this happened. So yeah, go out, enjoy it. It's cool. It's a great way to get some Marks of Honor, Conquest of Honor, if that's what you're looking to do. That is the Arathi Blizzard Brawl that's currently up. And I think it's also as part of the anniversary event. I think you get a token for doing this, but I'd have to check that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
yeah, something different. It's tied into that. So you do have to win one, but yeah, it's not like this isn't massively different. It doesn't like rewrite the rules of AB, it's still the same space, but you just have to deal with, okay, the lake is frozen and you can't see as far and stuff. So it changes up the dynamic a bit, but if you know how AB works, then you know how this brawl works, basically.
Yeah. World bosses, Kordak, the Dormant Protector, the big construct on Isle of Dorn, we believe is going to be up and about and wandering around, so you might be able to get your verse crit ring off of that, or some other rewards all at 603 eye level if you're looking to get some loot off of that. World boss is another great way to get some contribution towards things, although I noticed the world boss this week, again, is still bugged, where you cannot complete the world quest while you're in a group, which is really unfortunate for the world boss. So if they could fix that, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, that's weird. You kind of want to be in a group for a world boss generally. So
yeah, it's unfortunate. So they need to get around to fixing that one too. Mythic Plus affixes for the week. We think this is a Devour week. We're still figuring out the rotation fully, but we think it's going to end up being Devour, which means players are periodically afflicted with a heal absorb while in combat. Healing or dispelling this absorb gives players a stacking crit buff. Failing to heal or dispel it will heal enemies for 10% of their health, except for obviously inside Dawnbreaker, where that's a different mechanic, because otherwise you're healing a raid boss.
10%.
Yeah. But in general, what they mean by dispel is any dispel. This could be a curse, poison, it could be a disease, it could be a magic effect. Any dispel works on this dispel. So this is a week for your characters to bring a dispel inside of your talent tree into a dungeon to be able to get rid of this debuff and help out your healers, because it shouldn't just be the healer trying to actually do this. They will not effectively do it. And healing through it is a huge waste. And not to mention, you can't be healed while they're healing the absorb, which means if you're taking damage, you're not healing that damage back. So they then have to catch up after that, or you might die during the window of time where you have this debuff. So dispel yourselves is certainly the best way to go. I like this. Yep. This is something that doesn't fall prey to the issue of, hey, this spawned over there during the zone denial area thing, and I can't get to it to stop it from hitting the boss or to interrupt it or whatever it is.
True.
So it's just going to go off. Like, this doesn't suffer from that. It is tricky because you can end up in situations where this overlaps at a really bad time with when a boss is doing big, heavy AoE damage. And you have a whole healing plan laid out, and now that healing plan's gone awry because this big giant absorbs coming on top of people. That can happen, but that to me is less of a pain and less of something to manage than having orbs spawn out in the middle of nowhere and you can't do anything about actually dealing with them because the boss has put you inside of a tiny circle, and that circle is not allowing you to go anywhere. Like, there's a few bosses that do things like that. That is a problem. So spawn miles behind you, and you have to run back to deal with them if you want to. Like that, both of those situations are not good ones. Where I think Devour shines a little more as far as that goes.
It's like the least noisy one in the battlefield, right? There's no like physical element to it in the battlefield. Last time we had this, it was pre-nerf Poison Cleanse Totem.
Yeah. So
that is going to affect it a bit. I mean, Poison Cleanse Totem is still going to be really good for this, except you're just not going to be able to use it every single time it comes out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had the revelation, like after my first couple nights dealing with Devour, that bitter immunity exists, and I can at least, like every other one, I can bitter immunity myself immediately and just drop it. Which is like not a talent that I usually take. So, shuffle something around in the build and there you go. So warriors, make sure that you're running that. Even if you had like a shaman just made this completely pointless last time it came around. I believe it will be up this week because it matches up with Tyrannical. And so I think we sort of have this inside out rotation with Ascendant and Oblivion and Fort and Tyrannical, and then, so on and so forth. So that's why I think it's going to be Devour Tyrannical this week. But yeah, just make sure that you are bringing something to help out your team I think just about everybody has something they can use that will drop it.
Yeah.
This is not like Afflicted of old where it's like, well, that's somebody else's problem because there's literally nothing I can do about this.
Yeah.
So you know, bring it talent into it and use it, and you know, it's actually a pretty strong buff after they buffed it and everything.
I'm
and buffed the
super
duration,
excited
so.
about this. Yeah, I'm super excited about this. So that's gonna be
Yeah, this is one of those affixes where, like, we used to talk all the time in Dragonflight about the ghosts and like your comp mattering. Your comp doesn't matter quite as much as just everybody individually being prepared to deal with it and having some options and maybe bringing like a weird talent that isn't a straight throughput increase but helps the group out. Like, there's stuff you can do about this, and everybody just has to be on board with, you know, participating to help out with it. That's all.
Yeah.
Because like you said, like the healer, if the healer can heal through it at all, that probably wasn't the move.
Yeah.
Maybe you survived, but you might have other problems now. So
Yeah.
anything you can do to drop it is really strong against this. And the crit buff, I mean, yeah, you're going to do a lot more damage for, I mean, a 30-second duration on the Zalatas bargain buffs is great. So
Yeah.
And again, you're not going to waste that, like, you know, like we kind of mentioned, like running around back and forth, like getting out of position to absorb something or break something or whatever.
No,
you get a lot of benefit. You get most of that 30 seconds. Like if on a boss, like you're gonna get all that crit.
the number one pitfall that groups will run into, and this is something that I will caution everyone about. This is the number one pitfall you run into, is people using their dispels before an ability that needs to be dispelled. And then not being able to dispel that ability because you're on cooldown and now someone dies. So if you're doing like Mists of Tyrannosaith and you're running through the maze and there's the debuff that goes out that one-shots a player after a period of time, but you just use your dispel to get rid of Devour and that player dies, that is something that is going to happen if you're not paying attention to those sorts of things.
Yeah,
so
true.
you need to accept that, hey, there's going to be windows of time where letting that player dispel themselves or making sure that that player essentially sits with that debuff on for, you know, a little bit longer and then gets dispelled when the overlap happens, when the other ability happens, is going to be what actually makes this work. The boss to me that stood out as a huge factor for this is the last boss of Arakara. That last boss puts out a poison debuff on people that chunks people, and when it's dispelled, spawns waves. And you can just let it wear off on someone, but it's a lot of healing to deal with. And if they have that debuff and Devour comes out and you get both of them at the same time, it feels great. But you're not really knowing exactly when Devour is coming out because it comes out within a time frame as opposed to coming out at an exact time every time. Means that you are going to be in a situation where maybe they sit with that debuff longer than you'd want them to. But if they dispel themselves and then they can't get rid of the absorb shield that's on them in time and it heals the boss, that's a wipe. So the pitfall with Devour is, hey, you might have everyone doing their dispels, which is great, but be sure the actual dungeon dispels that exist still get dispelled the way they need to. So pay attention to that. That's a biggie. I'd almost say like you want to protect your healer's dispel so they can play the way they normally play every week inside of a dungeon, and you're taking care of everything else yourself. That's why it's so critical you bring something to handle this, so that your healer isn't put in a situation where they're using their dispel ability and now they don't have it for what they need it for. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that might be the trickiest thing with the poison cleanse totem change, you know, because now its cooldown is twice as long. I mean, really, if you're running with a shaman in your group with totem, like you weren't even thinking about this a couple weeks ago, you know, like you really weren't. Like she's like, okay, the shaman's gonna push totem every time Devour goes out, and then we're just done with it. Yeah, that's not going to be the case this week. So there might be a little bit of a learning curve too, you know, as we kind of readjust.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, as far as Hallow's End goes, it is live now through November 8th. And this year we have the Kazalgar Tricky Treats achievement, as mentioned, which is 18 new buckets you can go and visit. All of these buckets are on flight path routes. So if you are trying to do this in a way where you don't want to fly around and try and find things on your own, you can just use the flight path system for, you know, an hour and you'll have all these buckets and you're done. So just keep that in mind. There's also the patched Harvest Golem Transmog set, which you get from the Loot-Filled Pumpkins for defeating the Headless Horseman, which you can earn per character once a day. So be sure you're just knocking that out on your characters. You can get done really fast. They're very high drop chance. You pretty much just get it done right away with your first round of stuff. There are new vendor items for the patched Harvest Golem's back piece, as well as the patched Harvest Golem's fist weapon. There's also the ensemble for Prowler's faded headgear and Prowler's faded shoulder cape. So overall, those rewards, if you wanted to buy them all up, are 400 tricky treats. You can get 400 tricky treats pretty easily, especially if you have more than one character during the duration of this event. If you're going around and doing the trick-or-treating and all the old world stuff on top of doing the daily quests, you should be able to buy all this new stuff. Obviously, if there's more than just this new stuff, like I already mentioned, there's the actual trick-or-treat pumpkin that you might want to buy, the jack-o'-lantern you might want to buy. That's 150. If you didn't get that last go around, then that is something that you're going to have to, go and purchase. That's the bucket of morbid treats for 150 tricky treats. It came out last year. Then get another character out if you need to, and go do the tricky treating on the other character. You don't have to be a high level to do it. Be sure you have the toys for your flight paths, because again, almost all these things are on flight paths. The only ones that weren't on flight paths for me were in Dragonflight, awkwardly. There was one that you had to basically land at a flight path location, then run north to another small town to be able to actually get the tricky treating done there. But otherwise, it's very conveniently on flight paths, so that's super easy to do. There are 5 achievements from Dragon Isles, that including the tricky treat ones, so that's another thing you can get done as well. And of course, there's the Windborn Velocidrake Hallows and Armor, and of course the Arphis Pet, which comes with a feat of strength for getting the Arphis Pet. I know this because I got it off my first kill this year.
Nice.
I'm so thrilled that actually happened, because I didn't get it last year, so I was pretty thrilled to get it this year, and that was great. So yes, be sure you're doing your actual your Headless Horseman runs to try and get that stuff from the loot-filled pumpkins. There's a quest that you can get as well that tells you the story behind the Headless Horseman. That's something you want to participate in. You can go out and do that. So that's another good way to do it. There's also a hard mode, which is something I forgot about entirely for this, where you can go in and there's little wicker men. This has been around for quite a few years. Little wicker men just off to the left of the pathway when you enter the Headless Horseman's area inside Scarlet Monastery. And you can talk to them and turn on and off different buffs. And you can turn on all the buffs if you want, and get yourself a little achievement for doing that. So factor that in as well if that's something you want to do. Mostly,
I think it also increases the drop chance for stuff out of the
does it?
the
Okay.
pumpkin, like per affix. I would say do these if there's stuff you want out of the loot filled pumpkin, because in my experience, Horseman 2024 is dying pretty fast.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to have much of a chance to have the affixes screw you up too bad. So I say talk to the big wicker man and turn him on if you need any of the stuff that comes out of the loot filled pumpkin.
Yeah,
I think it does give you a better chance, I believe. And it's not gonna like make you wipe and embarrass you because you just died on Headless Horseman. Like, it's not that hard to deal with, and the Horseman's gonna die pretty fast.
Yeah, the things you have to deal with when you talk to the Wicker people are running to a certain location that glows, so you have to do that as one of the affixes. You have to stop a version of yourself from walking to the boss and DPS it down before it reaches it. You have to dodge swirlies on the ground, and then you have to dodge more stuff on the ground. That's really what those things are, so they're not super hard to deal with when you turn them on. You just have to be a little more heads up when you're actually doing the damage. But yes, the Horseman's dying fast enough that I'm not finding it's like brutal to try and deal with. Remember Horseman back in the day where you DPS him and his head would come off and you had to DPS the head, and then
you got to find where the head went. They
took
changed
a
the
lot
fight
longer.
up a lot. It's a lot better. I think the current Horseman fight's a lot better just for like a holiday boss. So
yeah, I agree.
There's so much stuff out of the pumpkin now with the stuff they added last year. The pet, the mount armor, the weapon, the head, the mount itself, the pet, the transmog helm pumpkin.
Yep.
Like there's so much stuff in that holiday cache.
Yeah. There's a 10% experience and reputation buff you can gain from Wicker Man outside of Stormwind, so be sure you're lighting the fires out there. There's a big bonfire out there. You can do a quest that lets you light the bonfire. And then there's obviously the one-time quests for like cleaning up stink bombs and throwing stink bombs and dousing the fires of the Wicker Man in the different major cities. I will say, if you're playing Alliance and you want to douse the Horde Wicker Man, there's two things. First of all, you can land on top of it, which is super easy because then none of the guards attack you, which is really nice. So just land on top of the giant burning Wicker Man and put it out. Second of all, if you are trying to get there from Stormwind, take the portal to Borealis. Inside Borealis, there's a portal to Ironforge. if you dynamic flight out the front door of Ironforge and up over top of the mountain, you can literally glide at a downward angle all the way there. It's really nice.
Yeah, it used to be like, oh, port to like Dalaran Crater, and then like immune to floor so you don't die, and then like, yeah, now you just drag and ride straight there basically.
It's really nice. So if you go at the front door of Ironforge, fly up and over top of the mountain behind you, which Ironforge is within, and just head out towards that Wicker Man, you will literally downward angle the whole way there, which is really nice. It takes you like 30 seconds to get there. It's wonderful. So just keep that in mind if that's something you're doing. When we have costume-wise, there's the 200 Tricky Treat costumes for Xavius, Lich King, Deathwing, and Gromash. I know a lot of people enjoy dressing up as things because my raid team does it constantly. The amount of times I was hit by Murloc wands last night during raid was a little excessive. Makes your character kind of hard to see, but people have a good time with it. So it's one of those things. And of course, there's also the pets you can buy for Naxi, Sinister Squatchling, Feline Familiar, Curse Berman, and the Widget, The Departed. Those are all pets you can buy for 150 from the original stuff, as well as pet disguises and hats and stuff to dress them up, and toys for the horse head and horse tail costume if you want to dress up with your buddy as a little Halloween gag.
They're great. Great. You need these if you don't have them.
And then the little Wicker Man toy as well. You can set up on the ground. And I actually forgot about this entirely, but yeah, there's the Ember Court Visions of Sire Denathrius is in there now for people who want to go back to Shadowlands. I forgot entirely about this in Shadowlands. So
yeah, if you really want to go do some Ember Court,
you can do that. Man, Venthyr Boomkin, those were the days. That was a crazy business. That was. All right.
I want to point out one thing. Don't forget to do, if you're really trying to min-max your treats, don't forget to do the Arya Sorrowheart daily in Bradensbrook. It's kind of out of the way in Val Shara, but it's you take the quest, you drink the potion, you go into the spirit world, you kill the mob, you come out and you get 5 tricky treats.
Oh, that's pretty good.
So if you're going down the list and going like, how am I going to get all these treats? Like, don't forget that's there. It's right out. It's, it's a little west of the Bradensbrook flight path, and you'll see the quest marker. I was doing that. Like I said, I got all my 400 that I needed for all the new stuff in the first 3 days, and it was great on the Druid because you could just like dream walk straight out to the Dream Grove, and then you're right there. So, there's some stuff seated all over the place. Like, it can be overwhelming, especially if you missed a couple years because there's just so much stuff to buy, and they added 400 more treats this year. But there's a lot of sources. You just got to try to remember what they all are. So, definitely your main city hub, your garrison, and Bradensbrook. The put out the fires thing is touchy, but you can get it to work. It's just not. It's like, what is it? 2 treats or 3 treats total a day? Like, what it really comes down to is how far behind are you on getting all the stuff you want, and how much appetite you have for trick-or-treating. There's so much trick-or-treating you could do. It's hundreds and hundreds of tricky treats per tune. It's just you got to go around the world and do it.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
But there's all this other stuff too. So you could budget your treats. You could kind of figure out how many you can get from the events per day for the duration, and then you can plan accordingly. That's what I had to do a couple years ago because I had fallen really behind. And I was like, I'm getting caught up on all these. I'm not doing this to myself anymore. I'm just going to get the new stuff every year. And so I had to, 1 year, I went just totally over the top with Hallow's End, just managing multiple tunes and figuring out who was going to buy what and how much I had to do.
Yeah. And
I've stayed on top of it since then. So, if you're in that kind of mode this year, hopefully that stuff will help you kind of max out on your treats.
I think Warlords of Draenor was when I did that, and then since then I've stayed current until Dragonflight. And so this year was my catch up from not doing Dragonflight, which was minor, fortunately. So there was a lot of treats, which was nice.
It just drops, so just horseman farming.
Exactly. All right, Day of the Dead is going to be running from November 1st until the 3rd. During Day of the Dead, people gather in graveyards to celebrate with and cherish the spirits of those they have lost. One can find the festivities in cemeteries of any major city, where celebrants cook, dance, don costumes, and more. And you can bring some simple flour and cold milk to complete the quest The Grateful Dead and earn the Macabre Marionette Battle Pet, as well as there's the Cliffside Wilder Drake Day of the Dead Drake Armor, and the Contenders costume toys for the Blooming Rose, Night Demon, Purple Phantom, Santo's Sun, and Snowy Owl Roses that are out there, as well as the Whimsical Skull Mask and Bouquet of Orange Marigolds offhand are moggable during the event as well, for someone who has the mog for all that. So if you're someone who wants to do some Day of the Dead stuff, particularly that cliffside armor would be really nice for folks who are looking at it. That's something you can participate in from the 1st until the 3rd of November.
Yeah, it's just a little event, but it's pretty cool. It's it's themed around obviously Dia de los Muertos in Mexico, and it's got the rewards are cool and unique, and there's like nothing else really like them in the game, and there's no other way to get them outside of this event. And it's only like 2 days. I missed the Drake armor last year because we were in Anaheim for BlizzCon. And I had no way to log into the game and go buy it. Yep. So I gotta obviously that will not be happening this time. So I have to do that. It's expensive though, man. It's like $500K, but I think I want it. It's really cool, and it'd be it's just a thing to check off the list. So keep that in mind if you missed it last year or whatever. Like that is new as of 2023, and this is a very short term event. So
yeah. All right, the Dark Moon Fair is going to kick off on the 3rd of November. It's going to run until the 9th, and this is your opportunity to get your extra profession skill ups and points out of doing that, as well as getting yourself that buff for the extra experience and reputation gain, as well as doing like a lot of the achievements and things that are there, getting extra pet battle tokens, farming up more tokens for Dark Moon Fair for more rewards and transmog and things, the stuff that's there. So there's lots to do around Dark Moon Fair. I know Wowhead is advertising that when Dark Moon Fair comes up, there'll be an 85% increased experience gain for characters. If you add up all of the stackable things, keep in mind one of those only goes to level 50. So it's not actually 85% all the way. It's sort of a scaling thing. And it also requires you to have 5 alts already at max level who then give you the 25% bonus. So there's a few caveats to that sort of stuff, but in general, we will have the 10% from the anniversary event, the additional 10% you can earn on a 12-hour cooldown from the anniversary event, the 10% that you can get from doing the bonfires for Hallow's End, and the 10% from Dark Moon Fair, at least on your character. Everything else on top of that is based upon how many characters you have at max level, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That will affect that. So this is a great leveling period that you can take advantage of. It is not something that you necessarily, I guess, will see very often with the game. This is a great window of time for you to get in there and level.
They've tamped down like flat XP buffs and bonuses mostly, but now it just so happens that some of the ones that still exist are all kind of overlapping. So yeah, when Dark Moon Fair starts up, it's going to be a great time. I might have to just grab the DK and just get the DK done this coming week once Dark Moon Fair starts. It shouldn't take very long. I have a 25% mentor bonus plus stacking all that on top of how fast leveling already is. I don't think it should take very long to do. And so I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll do some more tunes. Maybe I won't even do the DK, but this would be the time to do it, right? Like if you're thinking, hey, I want to level a character. I have another alt that I want to do. I would say unless you're really jazzed up about playing it between now and Sunday, like wait till Sunday and then stack everything up and just get it done.
You can. The other recommendation I'd make, and this is something we do with every anniversary event, take your alt stable, your stable of characters that you have. Bring them all out to the anniversary event. Park them inside of the tent. The tent at the anniversary event is a rested area. Log into them once a day. Do the trivia question.
Yeah.
That is a great way to passively level characters. If you happen to choose to, on those characters, participate and get the 12-hour buff. The 12-hour buff does not expire after 12 hours offline. It only counts down while you're online on that character. So if you take the time to earn that extra 10% experience gain through participating in the actual event, even if you do it, you earn that over 3 or 4 days because you just get in, do mount stuff once and then do mount stuff a different day and then do this a different day, and you actually earn that 12-hour buff. You will have that for the remainder of the actual event. If you just log in, do the trivia question, log out on those characters, you're talking about using 10 to 15 seconds of that buff every day for a 12-hour buff. You will not run out of that buff. So that is really nice. If you're someone who's like, hey, I want to level up a character, you can go to the Dark Moon Fair, get the Dark Moon Fair buff and bring them out there as well, and get the, Hallow's End buff and bring them out there as well, and have them parked there with all those buffs and log them in and out each day doing the turn-in. So, you can do these sort of passive ways of leveling characters, which is a nice way to do it. So if that's something you want to do, just move your stable out there and just, progressively level characters throughout each day of this event as it goes on for months when it comes to the anniversary event.
Yeah. It's a little absurd, but it's really good. I mean, back in the Core X Revenge BFA 100% XP buff days, when that came in, initially. Geez, I got a ton of XP on different alts through that. I haven't really been doing that here yet, but I should start taking advantage of it because it's so simple. And the nice thing too is like with Warbound gear, like I have stuff waiting for my DK. So it's not like, oh, I got to max level from doing trivia questions and now I'm in Dragonflight gear. Like I'll be able to replace a ton of stuff right away. So that's a really cool benefit of that whole system.
There's also gear you can buy at the event on your characters. So that's the other thing. And that gear will actually level up with your characters. It's kind of like heirloom gear. So just keep that in mind as well. So they have things like that at the event if you're trying to gear a character up who's up there. Okay. The 20th celebration event, since we're already kind of talking about it, let's talk a little bit more about what you can do to earn bronze tokens. Because everyone wants to know, what's the list? What's the thing? How do I get them? How many can I get? Well, the one-time warband quests are the meet and greet that you can do, the shopping, sort of walking around, here's where all the shops are, and the truth of the dark irons. Those are the three things that you'll get 13 total bronze tokens for doing that are just a one-timer. Once you've done them, you've done them. The weekly things that you can participate in are the Celebrating Good Fun, Chromie's Codex, an original Path Through Time, which is the classic time walking dungeons, Timely Gate Crashers, which are doing the world bosses, Disturbance Detected, which is the Blackrock Depths raid, and Soldier in Time, which is Korok's Revenge. This is weekly rewards that can be earned one time on your warband. You are not earning this on different characters. You don't have to do it on different characters. You do it one time for your warband to get these rewards, and that is how you get an additional 18 tokens from the tokens that you can get for the event. So now we're up to 31 tokens that you can get right there. The weeklies from Season 1, meaning the weeklies from the War Within that you can do that earn tokens, are the Pinnacle Cash reward quest that you can do, Theater Troop, Awakening the Machine, collecting the wax blobs off the ground, once you have the quest for that and actually turn that quest in, Spreading the Light, Severed Threads Pact, the Special Assignment World Quests, which you can do once per the 2 times weekly quests that are out there, so you earn 2 of them, basically. So there's 2 different times of the week where they spawn. They spawn on Tuesdays and Fridays, I think. So you can actually
it's Tuesday reset and Friday night.
And Friday night, So you can get 1 per each of those resets that happen for those. Kazalgar World Boss, the Queen Ansarek kill, which can also be done on the LFR and story mode. Weekly Sparks of War quest for 1 of those, and the weekly PvP quest get you 2, and the weekly Brawl get you 2. So overall, you've already gotten 31 from doing the previous stuff. If you then went in and did all the normal participation stuff that you're doing there, that's like another. We have to count the 2, so that's carry this and carry the 1 and do the extra. It's like 42 total tokens or 45 total tokens you can earn a week, somewhere in that range, for folks who are looking to actually earn this stuff. So you'll get most of the way towards buying your first transmog set this week if you did everything, and then very early in the next week you'd be able to get the next 15 that you need to be able to earn your actual transmog set you're trying to buy. And you can buy your first set, which means your next one's discounted, and you can continue along that path if that's what you're trying to do. Otherwise, you just earn even more tokens and buy even more things. So, yeah, I think they've set this up fairly well. I was talking with Jason before the show about how I kind of wish the entire system was just times by 10, so that it didn't feel like you were earning so few tokens. Like if they just made all the costs as a times 10 and they made all the earnings as a times 10. So it's like, yeah, doing the meet and greet, you got 30. That's crazy. So many tokens, right? Versus 3. Or like, hey, I did Severed Threads pack for the week. I got 10 tokens. That's great. Versus you got 1, right? Like I feel like for some reason inflation on numbers of this would just feel better. I don't know why, but it just feels like it would feel better. I don't know.
Yeah, we're dealing with really low numbers here in general, but hey, it's manageable, right? It's the stuff around. I think the anniversary event specific stuff is pretty obvious, like what rewards that, because you just go there and they give you a bunch of quests, right? There's a bunch of blue spiky exclamation points and you pick them up and they tell you what they reward, and there you go. So go and do that. It's the Season 1 stuff that I think people have been a bit more confused about, or maybe just more confused about how the tokens get distributed, because it is really only a one-time reward per warband per week right now. Like you are not getting, there's no way to grind these this week or anything. But but pretty much like everything we were already doing in season 1 also, does grant some. I did Sparks of War. I went war mode and went at the Hallow Fall, and I mean, mostly just opened treasures and did world quests, but that was a token that was not really that too far outside of what stuff I was already doing anyway. I thought about doing the PvP quest, but like, man, I queued up for like an arena skirmish and a brawl, and I was like, I'm just not doing this. Like, this is not how I want to spend my time. I don't like PvP in the game in general. And I don't even have like, I have no experience with modern like Fury or Arms. Like it's just completely outside of my wheelhouse. So those 4 tokens can just sit over there, but Sparks of War is totally doable without any real, I mean, okay, maybe you get, PK'd, maybe you get player killed while you're out there, but like, I don't know. I don't think people are really looking for that. I didn't end up fighting any Horde players. We were like gathering side by side and like diving on wax or whatever, and nobody got killed. So, whatever. It's just one extra one. But yeah, if you did like a pretty good lap this week, then you should be able to get your first 60 token set for at some point during this week's reset. And then the discount comes in, so set number 2 costs 40. Also, like, probably not this week, but probably for a lot of players the week after, you'll get to 100 total tokens that you've earned, which then will unlock repeatable sources. So I don't know what that really means because it doesn't specify on the achievement, but I'm thinking that like maybe the activities at the anniversary celebration will grant tokens just consistently for participating in them, which would be cool. Because then you could grind them if you want to get that 3rd set, you get the pets and the other stuff. That the other vendor, there is other stuff you can buy with your tokens, not just the Mog sets. But there's a toy, there's like pets from previous anniversaries. So there's some other stuff on my list. Like I never got the little flame elemental guy from, I guess it was from the 10th with the like drop in Molten Core. I don't remember, but there's one old pet that I need, and I want to get that new balloon toy, and there's some other stuff that is on tokens that isn't just Mog, but Mog is obviously first priority. I really feel like it seems a little strange and a little maybe opaque at first, and like, oh, this isn't a lot of currency and I don't know how I'm going to get all this stuff. But I think when you really lay it all out and you think about how some of the discounts and the other rewards, like the reward that turns on the repeatable yield, how that all kind of plays out and the duration of the event, I think it's going to be fine. I think, they want people participating a lot in the event initially, obviously, and it's kind of like gated in a way for behind that, like really like the first 2 sets basically are sort of like, okay, we got the training wheels on, everybody's only doing this stuff together, and then we're going to open it up. The people that really want to grind it and really max it out, go have fun. Everybody else, hope you enjoyed your time here and that you got something that you liked and you can pay attention to it or not.
I
think that's kind of a cool way to do it.
I think, I mean, hopefully it works out that way. I'm curious as to what the overall cap that someone doing everything every day could actually earn, and how much the cap of if someone had 0 and was trying to buy everything at the event, where the variance is there, right? Like, are there 20% more tokens you can earn than stuff there is to buy? Like that, I would be curious as to what the actual ratio is, so that you can know, because I'm a bit of a min-max brain, you can know, hey, I cannot do PvP this week and never have to worry about it being one of those things where we come down to the deadline, we're 3 days away, and I'm like, realize from my math, I'm going to be 5 tokens short of buying the last thing I want to buy. Like, that's not something I kind of want to run into. So I'm hoping that we have this large variance of you can earn 20 or 30% more tokens. So feel free to not do a third of the events that take place that earn you tokens, because you won't need those when it comes down to the end of the event. Because I worry there's going to be that thing that I'm like, oh, I need 40 tokens to buy this thing, and I have 32, and I can only earn 6 more before the event ends. Wow, I'm 2 tokens off. Right. Had I just done arena skirmishes, I would have been able to afford to buy the like that would have sucked, right? If you get to that point. So,
it certainly would. I think like most players in that mindset are going to arrive at that point well before January 5th.
I hope so. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping there's a large variance.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But I guess what I don't know right now, because I didn't do PTR and I haven't really paid it. I don't pay attention to PTR these days. I don't have time to do it, and so like I don't dive without having my own experience. I don't dive into what other people are looking at.
Right.
So like I don't know what the repeatable sources look like, and if it's possible, like if you just sit there and if you get tokens from doing like Fashion Frenzy or something, hey, you can just take a day and hang out there and just do the loop and just keep doing stuff and getting tokens.
Yeah.
And then, you can kind of do it. You can kind of grind it that way and just say, all right, I'm just knocking this out. I got some time today. I'm going to check off the next 3 items on my list and then I'm going to be really caught up. But if it's more like, the quests give repeatable rewards, you can do the quests every day or whatever, then that's like way more of a time investment for, a relatively small handful of tokens, which you would still want to do and take advantage of, but then it's more of like planning out the kind of daily rotation, right? So I don't really know what that looks like yet, but I think it's going to be okay. And I'll bet you they end up doing more adjustments to prices or yields or some kind of bonus or something. It's usually what they end up doing. So I think it's gonna work out. I think the structure of the event and the rewards are pretty good. And pretty like with all the built-in discounts and upgrades and stuff. The big thing is if you want to complete it, like you have to be working on it as early as possible. You can't let it go and go, oh well, they're just going to buff it, and I'll just like log in while I'm on my Christmas break and just knock it all out. Like I wouldn't count on that. I would participate in the event if you want the rewards from the event.
I agree. Okay. Hot fixes for the week. We're not going to go into depth on these because we've already covered the bulk of what happened with it, which they highlight at the very top in developer notes by saying they've identified and corrected a systemic issue that caused many class changes that happened in 11.0.2 to be missing from 11.0.5, and they've been implementing those changes via hot fixes. And so that is what was funky about this week, with a lot of class changes that went in to try and rebalance things that had been missing inside that situation. Now, as far as dungeons and raids go, there is now a small chance when completing Mythic Plus dungeons to acquire a Forgotten Folio, which can contain any of the dungeon-sourced recipes from the War Within. Thank God.
This is great. It's
Holy
so good.
crap. Because every time I'm like, man, I really would love to do this enchant, but where does it come from? Oh, it drops as a soulbound item from running a dungeon. Okay, I'll go run that dungeon. Oh, I didn't get it. Okay, I guess it's a drop chance from that dungeon. Well, I'm not going to spam this dungeon until I get this enchant. I'm going to buy it off the auction house, but this whole system kind of sucks. So I'm glad they're adding this because it's as though what they pictured when they developed the system was, oh, well, when people are leveling, they're all going to just spam run dungeons, right? And they'll just get the rewards from doing the dungeons.
But the odds are good that they'll get it from the dungeon,
Because a lot of the dungeons that these things drop from are not part of the Mythic Plus pool because they're part of current dungeons, 4 of which are not in the Mythic Plus pool. So we are in that situation where, you just don't get these enchants unless you go and spam run the dungeon. So I'm glad they're adding this to Mythic Plus dungeon rewards so that you can actually try and get all these recipes out of doing current content that is relevant to your character, as opposed to having to go back and like spam run normal dungeons on your massively geared character to try and farm enchanting recipes. Like
nobody wants to do that if you're in that situation, right? So I think this is a really strong change. I mean, it kind of begs the question, like, why weren't the recipes just guaranteed drops?
Guaranteed drops, man. Make them guaranteed drops.
Or like, why wasn't this kind of baked in to begin with? But I'm not gonna complain about it being improved in the game. At that point. So it was what it was, and it was kind of, I didn't do this. Like I wasn't like, okay, I'm just gonna go spam this dungeon for this blacksmithing pattern. Like I guess I don't care that much. Like if it's not something I'm gonna use, I'm not thinking about it in terms of like, I'm going to make money because I'm not spamming trade chat or whatever, right? Like to try to drum up blacksmithing business. I know people who are doing that and they're reaping the rewards, but I'm not doing that. So like my patterns only matter if it's something I'm going to use or somebody that I play with wants me to make them.
Right.
So I just didn't put the time into it. So I'm sure I'm missing some dungeon patterns, but this is awesome. And I think also making those end of run Mythic Pluses feel better is always a good thing, because Mythic Plus is something you kind of just do for Vault beyond a certain point, and it's like spicing up the end of run a little bit is really good too.
Yes, it is. All right, Narbu Palace, they finally added a way to get out of the dungeon once you've killed the Queen, Ansarek. There's now someone you can talk to who literally ports you outside of the raid, which is really nice.
This is so good.
Because it lets you move from normal to heroic and heroic to mythic in a much easier way. So thank you for not making us all jump off the edge of the platform and die to walk out of the instance, because that's what everyone had to do, which just seemed bad design-wise. So
like for weeks, my team has just been like, there are NPCs here. Like these are the NPCs that we like overthrew the queen with. Why can we not just talk to them to leave? You can do this on story mode, like all of that. So yeah, that's a great change. I haven't been in there, I think, since this change came in, but very much looking forward to raid this week and killing Ansarek on a lower difficulty and then porting out and immediately
it literally puts you outside the raid. It literally, like at the front door, you're outside of the raid.
Oh wow! It's not. It doesn't even put you like
It's one load screen. It doesn't put you at the start, and you have to then load screen out. It's one load screen puts you outside of the raid. So
amazing. I mean, this is, people can say whatever they want about this patch, but at least it has this. So
exactly. All right. As far as Blackrock depths go, they did a big tuning pass to try and reduce the difficulty on both normal and heroic. So a lot of this got reduced as far as that goes. Again, I'm not going to highlight this because it's like every boss got 20 to 30 to 50% reduced on some abilities to try and make it more accessible for people. And at the same time, also changed how things worked with scaling in some situations too. So to try and make it a bit easier, or made things larger to make them easier to spot. Like they're trying to get it in line with where it should be. It is not there yet. It still needs another wave like this. It feels like. But it's getting there, so folks are having that happen.
At least they're working on it, and they have plenty of time, right? Like, but I think the thing is, if you don't move on this quick, the people are just going to check out and not do it at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they need to do another big round this week, and then maybe they can dial it in. Like, I mean, it's funny to see how massive some of the reductions were in terms of damage or health pools, and then to have done it after these changes and just been like, this is so much harder than normal Nerebar Palace. It makes no sense. So hopefully, I would like this to be a cool part of this anniversary event and not just like an LFR chore that nobody wants to have to do.
Yes.
So hopefully they can dial it in a little bit more and just, move this stuff back another 15, 20%. And now we're talking about something, and it'll be a fun thing for people to run through instead of a headache. So
exactly.
hopefully it gets there. I'm going to get the tokens either way. I'd prefer not to have to do LFR.
Exactly. As far as jewel crafting goes, this made me very happy to see, because they actually went in and were like, hey, we've been looking at the whole overall market of jewel crafting and what's been happening with costs and stuff. And for some reason, we've noticed that the prices on glittering glass and handfuls of pebbles are just ridiculously expensive. And that's just because when you're prospecting, you have a low chance of getting those things, which seems weird because this is like I'm breaking apart rocks to try and find gems.
Right.
And I'm more likely to find gems than I am to find rubble. Like, what is the point of it, right?
I'm just so good at finding gems.
So weird.
Like, I'm such a good prospector.
Yeah.
Like,
so they went in and basically flopped this a bit. So you're now guaranteed to find glittering glass and pebbles when you're prospecting, and if you're 40 of 40 in the specialization. And when you're trying to find gems, you're slightly been reduced the maximum yield of gems that you find from actually doing some of this jewel crafting, which will increase the price of gems and decrease the price of glittering glass and rubble. And you might go, why does that matter? Because glittering glass is used to make alchemical flasks, which everyone uses, and is a massive effect on alchemy when it comes to making your actual potions and flasks. Having a higher tier glass vial is a huge difference maker in the overall skill required and concentration you'll use for making tier 3 or tier 2 potions and flasks. So having glittering glass be more accessible is good. It's a good thing. So I'm happy to see that happen. So that was a good change. And I like that they looked at professions and were like, hey, let's change something. That made me happy. Okay. The transmogrification class restriction has been removed for the armor class and weapon stats that were obtained during Mists of Pandaria remix event. So if you're someone who was not able to get transmog stuff from the class armor and weapon sets from there, you are now able to do that. That's great. They basically were like, hey, if you were a monk and bought mage gear, you can now have that transmog.
Well, also you can actually mog it, not just learn it.
Yeah.
Like you can mog over like the paladin stuff onto a warrior or vice versa, which is a little weird in a way, because like it's obviously like it's very class themed, but I think it's cool because it's not a tier set, right? It's stuff that may work with certain tier sets or whatever. It's very evocative of whatever class it's themed around, but it's not actual gear. It's only ever been cosmetic stuff. So I think it's cool. You can kind of, spice up a Mog set for a particular tune with some different options. Some of the weapons and stuff are really cool looking. So I think it's a nice change that it isn't. I think if they made it so that a class could just straight up Mog over another class's tier set, like, I don't know how I'd feel about that. I feel like that's a little bit like lore breaking or something. I have some just gut punch visceral negative reaction to that. A warrior should look like a warrior, a paladin should look like a paladin, you know what I mean? Especially those iconic sets that you recognize those silhouettes from a mile away and you know what you're looking at. I think there's some boundaries that maybe they shouldn't cross with that, but this stuff is not that, right? It's maybe a helm and shoulder and belt that looks cool with a certain Mog set, or it's like a weapon that looks cool with a Mog set, but it isn't that tier set. So I think it's, considering these items have only ever been cosmetics, I think it's fine to remove the class restrictions from them. So cool change, just opens up people's transmog wardrobes a bit more, and also we have like fashion frenzy going on, so that's, you need some more options for that. I think it's a good change, but I do think it does imply or like it moves close to a limit of like where I start to have a problem with, we need some transmog rules, right? Like they were too strict for too long, but I think we need some rules about who can do what in terms of their Mog, and this is starting to get close to that.
Yeah. No. Okay, as far as WoW 20th anniversary event goes with fixes, one of the biggest ones I want to mention is they reduced the damage of Azaragos' abilities. Man,
thanks.
I went to do this and literally watched at least 15 to 20 people die in the first 2 seconds. Like, it literally, we pulled the boss and it went,
one of those
well, boom, and just like everyone died. I was like, wow, okay, you guys all have fun. I've been doing these bosses in bear because I'm like, I just don't want to die on these fights. They're just not fun to die on. So I will just go in bear form, and I will beat on things and live through everything and be okay, because I have like 11 million hit points and can take massively reduced damage and have plenty of ways of healing myself, which is great. So that to me was the way to go. But yes, it was very funny to see some of these world bosses just have an ability go off and just one shots everyone around them. You're like, okay, that needs to get fixed. So there's the fix to Azaragos, which is good. For those of you who are doing the delve quests, the devs actually put a little note here that suggested, hey, if you were someone who had not been participating in the delve quests, since these delve quests stick around for a few weeks, the correct way to play was not to not do these quests and then you get a whole bunch of extra tokens, because visually all these quests would show that you'd earn tokens towards the anniversary event from doing each of these delve quests. But you only actually earn tokens on the first one you complete, and then the tokens reward will disappear from the other quests. This apparently caused some confusion, but what it really means is it keeps it fair for everyone, because the people who have been doing the quests every week now earn the same amount of tokens as the people who haven't been doing the quests every week, which I think is fine in keeping things fair. It makes sense this way.
It was sort of just like a weird display issue with the quests, right? Was really what it came down to. And maybe there's some difference in the yield between which different weekly quests give a certain amount of tokens. But yeah, like, so if, I don't know, if one of them gives 2 or one of them gives 3, I guess we'll see as that kind of goes through the rotation. I'm caught up on my weeklies.
You're fine.
So
it is guaranteed same. It's basically the delve thing gave a token, and people who hadn't been doing the delve quests could accept 3 delve quests, and each of those said they gave a token, but really, as soon as you completed one of them, the token reward disappeared from the other ones, from the other quests.
Yeah, and there was some other stuff that also worked like that, but was lower impact. Like, because I was testing it. This has changed now, but I was testing it with spreading the light, because the way spreading the light worked. Yeah, at the beginning of the week, it was like, it wasn't from the main world quest for spreading the light to light the 4 lesser key flames. It was to light a key flame and then take one of the repeatable quests from the NPCs for lighting it. But I wasn't exactly sure how it worked, or if each one of those quests would give it. So I picked up a couple of them, and then I did one, and then I checked the rewards, and the rewards updated, and it was like, okay, no, I'm not getting a token from doing more of them. Now, so like, this is in line with that similar kind of thing where this is essentially the same activity, right, for the week that grants the token, and you only get the token once, no matter how many of the activities you have queued up. This should be a lot cleaner, I guess, going forward. But Yeah, that was kind of weird, but it does make me wonder if maybe we'll see, different. Maybe we'll see different token rewards for different activities as other weekly stuff rotates through, or maybe they'll bump that yield up a little bit as we get farther into the event too.
Yeah. All right. As far as blue posts go for this week, we had one that came out last Tuesday, which was from Kyvax about arena rating and the adjustments taking place. Basically, they are shifting the MMR inflation around. So starting this week, players should see an increase to the MMR inflation in solo shuffle, 2v2 and 3v3 brackets. Our aim here is to align the arena ratings and rewards closer to the rated Battleground Blitz this season. The increase in MMR and solo shuffle will be the largest of the three, with the goal of reducing the rating disparity between solo queued options. We'll continue to monitor the health of the rated ladders and these changes, and they thank everyone for their feedback on the topic. So, yeah, if you're someone who is doing some solo shuffle and you notice your MMR went all wonky, that's what happened this past week. They are trying to balance it out against the other options, the other solo options that exist out there for folks to queue into. As far as
sounds like Blitz was just more lucrative than solo shuffle in terms of rating potential. So you don't really want that kind of imbalance to last for too long. So just kind of smoothing that out. So solo shuffle gets a little bump, and arenas get a little bump.
They also explained the elemental lightning rod adjustments that took place for elemental shamans. There was a lot of things happening with shamans that shouldn't have been happening. Like, for example, they could cast basically something that applies flame shock to stuff, and it normally applies it to 6 targets. It would just apply it 6 times to 1 target, which made their single target damage go berserk and insane and crazy damage. Those sorts of things were happening with elemental shamans. So like there were screenshots early in the week of someone doing like 4 to 6 million DPS against a single target as an elemental shaman. That was like on Tuesday.
Yeah, that's a little much for anybody right now.
Yeah, so
that's not a skill cap thing where it's like, look how good I am. I've unlocked shaman. Like, no, that's just not supposed to work like that.
Yeah, they fixed a lot of that stuff through the week. But what Kyvex gets to do with this is with the changes made in 11.05 to increase the effectiveness of several elemental talents and cooldowns such as Ascendance, the Lightning Rod talent greatly overperformed with a hotfix that went live a little while ago. Elemental. This note says Lightning Rod now gives 10% of all damage dealt to Lightning Rod targets as opposed to 20%, which is what it was at. This reduction should significantly reduce its effectiveness in AoE damage situations and less so when fighting a single target. This change may require shamans who were online and using the Stormbreaker talent tree to either log out or back in or swap to the Totemic Hero talent tree in order to get the fix and have that all work. And have the ability working properly. This all went into effect on Wednesday, so this is passed, so everyone's logged in and out since then, unless you're really going ham. This is one of those cases. So
you may want to log out.
It's just
if you haven't since
as a PSA,
then,
you might want to log out.
Yeah.
So that is one of the changes that went in. Lightning Rod was another ability that was affecting stuff. Shamans, like on Tuesday, were like breaking the game with the damage they could deal. There were a lot of raid teams that killed bosses that they had been struggling on when the fixes went live on Tuesday because they just had so much more damage increase. And then obviously they will now struggle to try and repeat that because all their bugs might be a little wonky. So that's something to keep in mind. But yes, shamans got themselves some fixes. Okay. Outlaw Rogue bug. We've already talked about what this is. And on the 24th, it was corrected. And so it's gone now. But yeah, basically Outlaw Rogues could just do ridiculously broken damage. They're now working on removing clearly exploited runs from leaderboards and taking actions against accounts where it was appropriate. So they state that, and that's good. I don't know what that's going to look like, and I'm kind of curious whether they're going to inform us as to what that looks like. But I don't know how you say removing clearly exploited runs. Like, you must be talking about keys where people are like, I'm bringing 3 rogues as my damage to this keystone. Like, I don't necessarily know, but I am glad that they are aware of how much this affected the leaderboards for Mythic Plus, and that they are going to need to make adjustments here, and we'll have to see what this all looks like. And it might result in bans for some people who are like, yeah, I just exploited the whole week, right? You know it's a problem.
I think people are probably going to catch at least like 4 days or something, if not more. I mean, it's like obviously Blizzard created conditions for people to do it, but what you had to do was so obscure.
Yeah.
There's no way you did this by accident.
Yeah.
So it was an exploit, and it was probably really fun to do. I would imagine that like what they'll do is look at like the highest performing runs and stuff, and then like analyze combat data around rogues and just see like, okay, what were they actually doing, and then those runs will probably just get like essentially deleted from the ratings and the leaderboards. And I wouldn't be surprised if I haven't heard from anybody. I don't know anybody that was doing this. It wasn't around that long, and I don't think anybody. I think everybody kind of knew like, listen, you're playing with fire if you do that. Like it didn't.
Dude, there are people streaming it. There are people streaming doing it. Like they were
sure, right. But it's one thing to do that for eyeballs or whatever, and it's another if like you're just like a person who wants to play WoW, like you don't want to catch a ban.
Exactly.
And the last step of activating the conditions was like murdering a critter, right? Like you set all the stuff up, and then you kill a critter, and then you switch your talents around, and then something bugged out, and now you've turned on God mode. So like it would. I think you could probably identify the people that were really exploiting this, and like if you were doing it, like that you were exploiting it, and if you are exploiting a bug because you want to, like that's cool, but like there's a long history. When you do something this convoluted to get this kind of a benefit, like you have to know that you're risking a ban. So proceed accordingly, I guess. Do whatever you feel like is the correct thing to do in that situation.
Yeah, you're aware of the consequences. All right, potential change. Well, not just potential. These are changes. They're coming up on October 29th. There are more class balancing and tuning things coming in. Blood Death Knight's getting a buff. Balance Druid is getting a tuning buff in the sense of going, hey, the stuff that we did last week was not really enough, and we need to do more, and it's not working the way we want it to, so we're buffing a bunch of other things. We are seeing a Wrath damage increase by 10%. We are seeing 5% more Starfall damage on top of, 6% more Starfall damage on top of 5% more Starfire damage, and an 8% buff to Star Surge, which overall is just a substantial increase in damage. But we're also seeing a 12% nerf to how frequently Sunseeker mushrooms come in and spawn, which means that that talent itself was overperforming and is now being tuned back down. So it'll be curious to see how that balances out with the other changes that are happening. Overall, it's a damage increase, which is good. Power of Goldrin's damage increased by 25%. This was a 2 talent button. You had to put 2 talent points in to get the Power of Goldrin fully unlocked. However, they made it 1 this past week and nerfed its damage by, I think, 40%. And people are just like, this is no longer worth taking at all. We're not taking it all. So they're buffing it back up by 25% to try and make it actually valuable, which is good to see. Rattle the stars increases starfall damage by 8%, down from 10%. So they're also making that talent less impactful as something that people need to actually take necessarily. It is still a massive damage increase, so it is something worth taking, I think. But by increasing starfall damage and star surge damage across the board baseline and then making Rattle and Stars be less effective, I can see that they're trying to be like, okay, general Boomkin should be stronger. This particular ability does not need to be, as a choice node, does not need to be something that people are taking necessarily. New Moon and Half Moon damage reduced by 5%, which was hilarious to me because for the first time in 2 expansions, we saw New Moon and Half Moon actually be cast in a single target rotation. Now, to choose to use moons was, for me, a 3,000 DPS increase. It was so minuscule to choose to take this ability. It was not worth, in my opinion, taking, because it was a totally like thing you had to work in your rotation in a large way, which to me is just not worth it. If I'm gaining less than 1% damage, not even like 0.03% damage is what I'd be gaining in this situation. If that's what I'm gaining, it's not worth going, hey, let's put another button on my bar that I have to hit and hit at the right times to actually gain that damage. Otherwise, it's a DPS loss. That is not worth it. So I think it's funny to see the nerf come in, because it's like it did that thing where like the dam flooded up high enough where the water started to creep over and the moons came back for like a brief period of time. And then they're like, no, dam that up some more. We don't want any moons in here. So Yeah, it's gone again. I really enjoy casting Full Moon. It is a very fun ability.
It's so cool. It's a shame it's not like a bigger part of the thing.
There's literally a talent at the end of that tree that Full Moon becomes full once more, which lets you actually cast a full moon and then cast a second full moon, which just feels really good to do. However, it's not a viable talent, and I think this nerf will probably remove it from being inside people's trees on single target at the moment where it was living. So if you are someone who just enjoys playing the game and is playing at the normal raid level and whatnot, I mean, feel free to use moons all you want. I think it's a great ability for to use. Unfortunately, at the higher end stuff, this is not a talent I think people should be taking. So that nerf should reduce it right back down again to being not really relevant, I think, in the actual meta for people playing Moonkit. Resto Druid got themselves some more buffs. They the Call of the Elder Druids duration was increased by 5 seconds. Dream of Cenarius, the Wrath and Shred transfer is up to 100% now. So there's a nice damage buff for Resto Druids who are doing damage like keys and that sort of thing. They also buffed up Resto Shamans in a big way in that sense. Resto Shaman damage got a huge buff, so that was another thing that we saw happening there. Beast Mastery Hunters, they did some changes for you all as well. Did you want to talk about this at all, Jason? Or are you, I know you highlighted something here, so I just wanted to check.
Well, I mean, there's just some developers notes that, I think were kind of relevant.
Sure.
I mean, first of all, they say Beastmaster's overperforming in single target, and so they're reducing single target and trying to improve its lackluster AoE, they say.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of, I don't know. I've been, one of my buddies has been running a lot of Beast Mastery, and I think his AoE has been actually pretty good. He's a really strong player, though. It's one of those deals where the player can overcome the tuning,
Well, it's what we saw this past week with Death Knights, where Death Knights, Frost-wise, got this big nerf. They came in for Frost, and all the Death Knights were like, woe is the world, we're dead, we're doomed, we're never going to play, and they still are top damage in Mythic Plus and inside any raid AoE situation because they just destroy things. And you're like, okay, I heard you guys woe is meing and recognize that the nerfs they put in still kept you in the #1 spot. So let's just chill out your Frost Death Knights, all right?
Yeah, I also play with a really strong player who mains Death Knight. He's been mostly playing Frost, but I think now he wants to check out Unholy. I mean, he was doing fine with Frost, but he doesn't love the playstyle. He likes Unholy better. And
I hear that. Yeah.
As Unholy becomes kind of more competitive, I think he's kind of leaning more in that direction. So, that's just one of those things. But yeah, I think the Hunter stuff is kind of a mixed bag. It's like some buffs, some nerfs, there's some kind of reworks to sort of where it sits in the overall sort of landscape of combat. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of run the gamut. I have like some really super strong hunter players and then some hunters who are just kind of along for the ride. So
yeah. Well, either way, we'll have to see what these balance changes actually feel like overall for those classes and what they're actually going to be doing for this. I will say Mistweaver Monks got themselves some healing buffs, so keep that in mind. And they also played around with some mana cost stuff for Holy Paladins, so they're actually making things cost a little bit more base mana than they previously were. So your mana is going to be a little bit more finicky this week, I would say. And Discipline Priests actually getting themselves a buff. Powered Radiance increased by 20%. Flash Heal increased by 15%. Premonition of Piety increased by 5%. It's up 5% from where it was. Preemptive Care increases Atonement duration by 4 seconds up from 3. So you guys are getting yourselves some more healing buffs to Discipline Priests. We might see some more of those showing up in Keystones, maybe even raids. We haven't seen any Discipline Priests in raids very much lately. Shadow Psychic Link now increases direct damage by 30%, up from 25%. So that's another big one there for those targets affected by Vampiric Touch. Shamans, you got yourselves a whole bunch more tuning coming at you. Feel free to feel this. Elemental seeing some 10% and 20% reductions in damage on some of their abilities. So this is one of those cases where they said with all the changes to Elemental and Enhancement Shaman and 11.05, some changes were performing beyond our tuning goals. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, were. Yeah,
we're adjusting several talents and abilities to reduce overall power. Yeah, Shaman should not be 30% ahead of the next DPS in any given situation. So yes, we're seeing Enhancement getting Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, and Stormbringer nerfs. And we're seeing Elemental getting Stormbringer, Echo Chamber, Ascendance, Premonition or Preeminence. That's it. Yeah, those are the nerfs, and then they're buffing Farseer damage for Ancestral Elemental, as well as Farseer damage for Ancestor Lava Burst, which I assume are abilities that were not being used very much, and so they're trying to bring them up to being used.
Seems like they're trying to get Farseer a little bit more, comparable with Stormbringer, I guess, because we're seeing Stormbringer actually catch some pretty big nerfs, I would say, like the Arc Discharge talent. You get one instant cast Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt, where you used to get two. Like that's actually a big nerf. It's a small number, but it does half what it used to do. And Voltaic Surge, which it's buffing Earthquake and Chain Lightning damage.
Yeah,
that went from 15% to 5%, so that got knocked down quite a bit. But the Farseer saw some buffs, so probably just trying to make those a bit more competitive. Like, hey, play Farseer if you want to. I guess we'll see how that plays out. I mean, the Shaman main that I've been playing with the most, like, he's just switched between all three specs. He was mostly playing Elemental last week because I guess how could you not? But he's mostly played like Enhancement in situations where he's DPSing.
Yep.
So
it's super powerful.
Yeah, we'll see. Kind of how players react to these changes. I mean, I think there's some, there's some like wisdom obviously in making the hero talents attractive. You don't want like one to just be the default choice, but like in my case, there's not much warrior stuff that I want to get into here for this coming week, but like, they're buffing Demolish, which is the active ability for execute damage is good, but they're trying to buff up Colossus a bit and make Demolish do more single target damage. That's cool, but like I don't want to play Colossus. I just don't want to.
Yeah.
Thane is what I want to play thematically, and in terms of the play style, I don't want an extra button and another thing to manage. So like, you can buff Colossus all you want. It's a hard sell for me because it's just not what I want out of the game, and I'm fine with that. I'm not like I don't feel like I need both of my choices to be equally viable when I want to switch between. Like, I like to lock in a build, and that's kind of my character's identity, and that's what I play.
Yes. What you want is players who are choosing that particular hero talent track as their character identity to feel like they're viable enough in that decision that they're not making some huge mistake by choosing to do that. So like I appreciate them doing those buffs. I do think that's something Boomkin's suffering from at the moment, because their other alternate talent tree is one that eliminates going into solar eclipse entirely, and you only go into lunar, and it really has niche situations where it's strong, and I think that's really unfortunate. So I do think they need to look at either entirely redesigning that hero class tree for Boomkin to sort of go, okay, this just does something completely different now than what it previously did. Maybe it's all about moons, and we can just embrace moons inside the moon tree, and it's all about making your moons better, and you use moons more often, and et cetera, et cetera. That would be great to me, as opposed to going, hey, let's just eliminate going into solar. Or if you are going to eliminate going to solar, maybe one of your main casts is, moons that are on a regular basis that you're using for that. I don't know, but in general, it's lackluster in comparison to going with trees. So it just doesn't make sense. Okay. I want to hear no complaints, even though I guarantee you I'll hear complaints from Warlocks this week. Warlocks, man, oh man, you guys are getting every single spec you have buffed. The developer note literally says we're increasing the throughput of all Warlock specializations to make each more competitive with other classes in both single target and multi-target situations. In particular, for Demonology, this means reverting the reduction in demonic core generation to help with overall mobility. We'll continue to monitor the performance of each specialization to make further adjustments where needed. In other words, now that we've buffed you a ton, expect nerfs next week, because this is going to be way too broken. Because man, oh man, we're seeing 10 to 25% increases in major core abilities for these classes. It is a huge buff for Warlocks, so you guys are going to be feeling really good. The fact that they're embracing and giving you more mobility, even when I see something as scary as Chaos Bolt damage increased by 10%, this is an ability that can do 6 million damage at the moment. Let's just be clear. Like, that is crazy, the damage buffs that we're seeing on some of these things. So, yeah.
I mean, I love roasting Warlocks just because it's kind of the dynamic that I feel like every team sort of ends up developing an identity over the years, and you just sort of, I don't know, you just have this kind of culture. And we have long had a culture where like the Warlocks are just so downtrodden, right? Like, they're just these long suffering. They try to switch mains or whatever, and they always come back to the Warlock. And there's, so we're always just dunking on Warlocks in my circle. It's comes from a place of love, I think, but it still happens. But yeah, I mean, like, there is something to be said for like the demonic core change was a deal where everybody was like, we don't like this, it's not fun. And they're like, well, we'll wait and see, and then they put it in and it's not fun. And then people who want to play demo can't or don't enjoy it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's sort of like old Team 2 business where it's like the players hate this, but just do it anyway because it's correct or whatever. Again, I'm not saying like let the players design the game, but maybe they're onto something sometimes when they have those kind of complaints. So I'm glad to see that getting reverted. I mean, one of our warlocks, the one warlock who still has a fire burning inside of him, it loves demo. That's his favorite thing to play, and he's very excited for this. So I'm very happy for him. And I mean, warlock it's a demanding class to play. There's a lot of plates to spin. So if you're not getting the benefit from it, then why are you doing it? So I think some throughput increases are probably a good idea.
As someone who's currently playing a Boomkin, which is the most squishy, easy to kill class in the game, seeing these sorts of level buffs come in for Warlock makes me go like, wow, the tankiest caster class in the game with the most survivability buttons is now getting massive damage buffs. So that's great. I think it's great. It'll certainly help us in Prague. It's good to see. I do think I would love, once they actually figure out how to get Boomkin being more relevant in the damage it's dealing, I would love to see them go, hey, we should like look at the fact that we've put in things for things like shamans where they just get 10% more stamina baseline, and warlocks where they just get a ton more health baseline and a bunch more damage reduction baseline. We should do something like that for Boomkin at some point, because forcing them to only be able to survive by shapeshifting into bear regularly, and even then they often still die because they still inside bear form have less health than a warlock. Maybe we should do something about that at some point here,
Yeah, it's like the shapeshift really should be the answer, right? Because that's the class identity, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but if it's not the answer, then I think, that's maybe the way to go, is to like, okay, you can borrow some power from your guardian training or whatever, or you can shift into bear and then you gain like a really strong defensive benefit, and maybe you can also hit a cooldown so you can use other abilities that you can't use in bear normally. Like I think all that stuff should be on the table versus like just doing like balance specific stuff, because that's like the class, that's the class identity, that's the class lane.
I get
to
that.
Me. So
I get that, and they have put in a talent that embraces that, which is nice. However, the fact that it's not a large enough buff is the problem. I think shapeshifting into bear should give you 30% more health, not 10% more health. I think
that's just not enough. Yeah,
like those sorts of things to me are where I notice the difference. Where it's like, hey, my Boomkin has about 5 million hit points at almost 630 item level. Okay, there are people out there playing, enhancement shaman have like almost 7 million hit points at comparable item levels, and you're like, okay, you shouldn't have that much more health than me. And when I go bear and I get up to 7 million hit points, that's not a yay. That is a hey,
you're giving
I'm
up
now
so much to be in bear. So
yeah. So that's where I think like they really need to have a peek at that sort of stuff. So Boomkin survivability, that is high on my list. This past week has been brutal for that. I actually switched all my avoidance gear out for leech gear because I just literally could not heal myself enough. I literally was using renewal, health pots, health stones, and out of 29 pulls we did on Ovanax, I cast Frenzied Regen, like actually went into bear and cast it and sat in it 31 times out of 29 pulls. So, and some of those pulls are like 30 seconds long where you didn't even get to do it. So let's just, just factor that in of like, okay, how much time am I spending in bear trying to live in these situations? Let's deal with this issue a bit.
Yeah, that shouldn't be like a main thing you're managing. It should be like, okay, this is an emergency situation. Let me do this. Or like, here's a part where the lead is calling for personals or whatever. Okay, this is what I do. Cool. It shouldn't be like I'm constantly micromanaging my own health because I could die at any moment.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and it does feel like I am having to do that, and it's a little weird. I was linking a log to our healing lead yesterday where the second section, first egg break, is how you have to talk about things inside of that Ovanax fight. I literally break an egg still have the absorb shield remaining from the actual initial period of time before the egg break happens, and have to Healthstone Health Pot renewal to clear that absorb shield, because I almost always immediately get the web debuff afterwards, which chunks your health down very quickly. And I would not have enough health to shift into bear and break the web debuff, because when you break web, it does damage to you without it killing me. So like I literally have logs where like in a 5-second window, you see me at 60% health. I use a healthstone, nothing happens. I use a health pot, nothing happens. I hit renewal, my health goes up by like 4% or 10%. And then I immediately shapeshift to break the web debuff and drop to 10% hit points. And it's like, okay, that's all. And then I hit frenzied regen and I go up by, 10 or 15% health because I'm taking damage while I'm frenzy regening. And you're like, okay, like I had to do that consistently. Like it is the class is 2 glass cannon. It needs more to be able to survive through this stuff. So I do think Boomies need something there. All right. Enough of that. Warriors. You should be rejoicing as well. Your arms and fury specs both got buffs. They're trying to get you back in line with actually doing the single target damage that you should be doing. You shouldn't just be AoE machines. And I know last week they capped you at 5 targets, but you're still AoE machines. You are still the ones who compete with Frost Death Knights most often when it comes to AoEing inside of any kind of situation. So I'm glad they're adding some of this back in. You did get things like arms got a cleave damage buff to try and help with some of that stuff too. But in general, you're seeing like Bloodthirst, Bloodbath, Rampage, Overpower, Mortal Strike. You're seeing execute damage across the board buffed so that, you're able to keep up a little bit better on those single target fights. So Warriors rejoice.
10 to like 20% increases on like some core abilities, pretty nice tuning, and more Thane buffs for Fury, trying to just work that in a bit more. And I think Thane could be a cool option for Fury if they keep, working on it and tuning it up. It's a little weird, I think, from hearing from people playing Fury and not whirlwinding because you're thunderclapping, but like that's kind of the beauty of the hero talent. So it would be cool if that kind of sticks. And I mean, 30% increase on Lightning Strike is pretty big. I'd like to take that. I just got some Lightning Strike buffs not long ago, but I'll take more of that too.
All right. Last but not least here on the show, there's a save the date coming up for the 30th anniversary actual event, the anniversary direct, as they call it, which is happening on November 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. There's a special presentation celebrating 30 years of World of Warcraft and the what's next and what's going up, what's happening next. That's all going up on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. Apparently they are going to do a TikTok part of this announcement as well. I will not be watching this on TikTok. Sorry, TikTok. I will probably stick with Twitch on this. Yeah, 10 a.m. Pacific time on the 13th, which is a Wednesday, means that I will very much be at work. It'll be 1 p.m. for me. So I will see if I can actually catch this live. I'll probably most likely catch it in a VOD because they're doing it in the middle of the day on a Wednesday. I'm just saying, it's one of those things. You put it there, it's hard to watch.
Yeah.
But yes, so this is just going to be a big announcement. It's going to be about what's happening next. There's going to be a special presentation for a 20th anniversary concert broadcast for the 20 years of music. So that's going to be something that folks are going to be able to check out, which is going to be a big deal. There is a big anniversary Warcraft universe, and everything celebration. This means Rumble. This means Hearthstone. This means Warcraft Orcs and Humans, which also a lot of people are speculating, are we going to see a relaunch of Reforged come out? Because there's been a lot of reasoning and theory crafting and tinfoil hatting about whether or not we're going to see a relaunch of Reforged, which could be cool if it comes out in a really non-broken good state. That could be super exciting for some folks to go back and play. But yes, be ready to celebrate on the 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically like our BlizzCon for the year, I think, right?
It's
like
closest thing we're gonna get.
It's, I mean, there's no Diablo or Overwatch stuff here, obviously, or no like brand new franchise anything, but like this is the stuff that would be at BlizzCon opening ceremonies for the Warcraft brand.
Yeah.
I assume that we'll see like an 11.1 preview, maybe a 2025 roadmap for WoW. So
yeah,
it's just everything to expect over the next few months. It's a weird timing for Hearthstone because like a set will have just come out.
Yep.
So, but I've heard some rumblings that there's some big features coming to kind of reinvigorate Hearthstone in a way for, as they move into the second decade. So we'll see what that entails.
A All I ask is if they're going
Yes.
to add more things to Hearthstone, that they do it in a way coding wise that doesn't make it worse. Because right now that is like the jankiest game I run on my computer. The amount of times it takes forever to load, or doesn't load, or fails to load, or drops me out of queue, or it doesn't happen, or like it crashes, or like it's that for like I feel like at the moment they started adding game modes, however they're like sticking them together in the code to make more things happen, and whatever database they're pulling from for cards is like breaking their game slowly. So I just hope it cleans a lot of that up, because it is brutal for that.
Yeah, I think the mercenaries thing kind of scared them off of doing like really radical new modes. So I'm not expecting like a new mode, but maybe some way to kind of freshen up the whole loop, or maybe I don't know, add some other ways to use your collection.
My guess is it's going to be a Hearthstone competitive against each other roguelike, where you are starting out with a base deck and adding cards and abilities to your deck like they had inside their dungeon events that they used to do ages ago, where you had the solo play options. But it's going to be a you against someone else, against other people as you progress through it, as like an actual game mode that you can play. That's my guess.
Maybe. I mean,
roguelikes are very popular right now. That's my guess.
That's very similar to what Duels was like.
Yes,
and Duels kind of fell flat eventually, and they killed it. So maybe. I mean, I think there's definitely space there to do something cool. I didn't really like Duels, to be honest, but
I didn't either.
There could be space there. Rumble is a weird one, because we have had kind of everything that they told us delivered at this point, and we know the game really hasn't found an audience, and we know they got hit with massive layoffs. So like I expect more support and more content for Rumble, but I don't know what to expect at this point. And yeah, the Warcraft 3 stuff is what's percolating for me the most, because there's too many signs that point to there's going to be some big announcement about Warcraft 3. Like a 2.0 patch hit a PTR briefly a couple weeks ago for Warcraft 3, which, just to put that in perspective, like when Reforged came out, that didn't get a new numbered version. That was like patch 1.38 or something.
Yeah.
So them moving to Warcraft 3 2.0 is potentially a huge deal. We have the 4 back attachments as the bonus reward for November trading post. Okay. They put out a mount bundle you could buy in the shop this past week for 30 years of Warcraft, and it includes a human mount, an orc mount, a night elf mount, and an undead mount, which were the 4 races you could play in Warcraft 3.
Yeah.
And they released some, special anniversary 30 years of Warcraft key art that has Medivh in his Warcraft 3 costume, and it has Thrall in his Warcraft 3 costume on his Warcraft 3 mount, and it has Tyrande in her Warcraft 3 costume on her Warcraft 3 mount, and it's Jaina in her Warcraft 3 costume. Like, you look at that and you go, this is Warcraft 3 art, essentially. So, I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. Reforged really was a huge disappointment, because Warcraft 3 is one of the best games ever made by humans. It deserves that kind of long-lasting remaster like StarCraft and like Diablo 2 got, that can just sit there and be enjoyed forever. Also, Reforged like broke the existing Warcraft 3 client. It replaced it.
Yeah.
It didn't have all the features. You couldn't go back and play the old version.
Yeah.
There were just so many problems with it. And actually, it's discussed a bit in Play Nice, the book that Jason Schreier published earlier this month, that like the way it was done was a complete mess. The producer on it was a guy who was in over his head and was trying to do it way too on the cheap. And the end result speaks for itself. And it unfortunately didn't deliver. But Warcraft 3 doesn't deserve to have its legacy tarnished like this. And I've been hoping that maybe Microsoft would inject some kind of momentum into like fixing Warcraft 3 and having it be this thing that could sit there forever that people would want to buy and play and enjoy. So I have my fingers crossed for that. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. But we'll see.
My tinfoil hat for that is we get the fixes that you're looking for Warcraft 3 and the announcement of a Warcraft 3 Cataclysm expansion. That's what I'm thinking. You see what happened. Cool. What happened after Lich King? So Lich King took place. We then get Cataclysm expansion, and you get to explore the Cataclysm storyline inside Warcraft 3. And they
that'd
can
be really cool, like a brand new Warcraft 3 campaign. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure we're getting a lot of stuff announced. Obviously, like this is their product showcase for Warcraft for maybe the next entire year, or more or less, right? Like they're going to lay out months worth of products and content. Yeah. So, maybe we'll hear something about like Miss a Pandaria Classic or something. Like that's possible too.
That's true. Yep.
You know, I'm sure we're going to see a huge amount of like 11.1 stuff, you know, maybe even beyond that, right? Like maybe we'll see some teases of upcoming patches beyond that, but we're at the point now where it's time for them to peel the curtain back on like where we're going next, like what the new zone is, what the new raid is, what kind of the new, you know, systems hooks are going to be. I would say that's almost a definite for this presentation in a couple weeks. And
yeah,
it's just, yeah, there's a ton of other stuff kind of swirling around, but you know, for WoW players, we know we're going to get what we bargained for. I think we could pretty much call that a certainty.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a new book announced that is transitions between this patch and the next patch or something like that. Like that.
Yeah, maybe some consumer product stuff too. Yeah, sure.
All right. With that, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. I'm giving a special shout out today to Alianas, Arajian, Bradley, Dustin, James, Kapawi, Max, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much for what you give, as well as what all of our patrons give, past and present, to our show. We appreciate you. You help keep the archives online, keep the show posted regularly, keep us doing these early morning, almost 3-hour records that we're doing.
It was morning when we started this.
Yes, it was. It's now afternoon, and we're gonna go get lunch after this. And I have a bunch of editing to do. So yes, thank you so much, patrons. I will get this episode out as fast as I can for folks to get out there and enjoy. And thank you for all that you give. No new patrons this week. If you want to find our Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/thestartingzone, or you can go to thestartingzone.com and click on the patrons link that is there and hop in and support the show. It's just a few bucks an episode, and so we appreciate it. Whatever you want to do and you want to give is all going towards making the show better and keeping it on schedule and producing it regular. And yeah, we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, patrons. All your support over the years has been incredible, and it is what keeps the show going and keeps everything online for everybody to check out whenever they want to, and you know, keep the show's production standard as high as we can have it. So thank you so much for all your support. And if you are interested in supporting, we haven't kind of shouted this out in a minute, but please do not use like the iOS app the Android app for Patreon, because the app stores skim off the top of that. If you want to support us, the best thing to do is do it through the browser, support us directly at the Patreon link. And that way you are not getting scraped by an app store that is not really doing much to deliver this show to you, if anything at all. You can get it direct from us, just from the RSS feed. You don't need any of that anyway. So if you do want to hop into the Patreon, just go straight to the website.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want to be paying more than you need to just to feed into like Apple or Android or anyone like that when it comes to contributing towards the Patreon. You want those funds, as much of those funds as possible, to go to supporting the shows and the products that you are supporting. So yeah, let's focus on using the browser for that sort of thing. All right. Another great way to support the show is leave us a 5-star review on your iTunes, your Apple Podcast, which I know can be a pain to get in there and do, but it's a great thing to do, and it helps us out, and it raises us up those charts and makes more people be able to discover our show. And we love reading them here. This one comes from Giddy Kip in Great Britain. It says, top World of Warcraft podcast. This podcast is an absolute banger. If you love World of Warcraft, very knowledgeable hosts, whether you are a Giga Chad or a filthy casual like myself. I love listening at work, so I know what activities to partake in when I get home. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much, Giddy Kip, for getting in here and leaving us the review. We appreciate it. And man, looking forward to creating more episodes going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for writing in. Great to hear from you. Glad you dig the show. And man, you got a lot of activities to partake in when you get home from work these days. So better get your checklist ready and start going down the list, because man, with all these events rotating and everything, there is so much stuff to do right now. And so hopefully, I mean, for me, it's definitely been a question of time budgeting, and like, there are just tunes I'm not playing this week. So, you know, I don't think it's a terrible problem to have, because it's a relatively short-term thing, you know, and you know, it's just like anything else in life. You gotta assess what's important and focus on that stuff. And now that I got Hallow's End done, that frees up some time for some alt stuff. So that's just kind of how it goes.
Yep. That's going to wrap up episode 655 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show, leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or reach out to us on Twitter at The Starting Zone, or you can find us on Blue Sky at The Starting Zone, or you can join our Discord server, startingzone.com/Discord. we'll get you over there to join the Discord server and partake in all of the Discord conversations that take place. If you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/the starting zone. Check out all the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and all that kind of fun stuff. Trying to find the show, it's on Twitch at twitch.tv/the starting zone, in case you're curious where that is. Trying to find Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me for some reason is still Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. I'm as long as it's online, I just can't stop reading it. I don't know.
Yep.
But you can also find me at Blue Sky. A lot of WoW Twitters over there now. It's just jlucas.bsky.social. So you can come follow over there. I'm trying to cross post, but some stuff just seems like it doesn't make sense on Blue Sky. So, but come follow both of those, and you can find me streaming on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. I think drops are still going on for a little bit, so probably just be Twitch streams for now while we're dishing out scarab beetle pet things. So, I'll probably be streaming tomorrow, 7:30 Eastern, Tuesday, Wednesday for raid nights. I'll probably do a Sunday stream too. We'll see. But yeah, come check out the video channels as well.
Trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey. You can also find me over on Blue Sky. There is a twitch.tv/SpencerHD channel, as well as a youtube.com/@SpencerHD channel. If you want to give those a follow, feel free. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.